Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube, and it's time to go through all of our Week 7 NFL preview here, Sam.
Yep, it is. Is that
the
same number that I put on the tweet that I just put out? Yes, it is.
Hopefully, Week 7. Now we're in that range. I can't memorize everybody's record off the top of my head. I don't know what week it is. It's just the heart of the season.
Week 7 is the point where your brain taps out and says,
no, just
too much.
More numbers in there. A little more confusing. Luckily, there's been no ties in the NFL. So it's we don't have to deal with remembering a team's record with ties. Do you happen to have our picks leaders that you could pull up?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go through. So we go through our picks every week on the preview show here, Sam, me, and my son Harry, who's 9. So you got an update for us between us and then our Discord friends?
I do. So, yeah, we have these two leagues running in the Discord using the Sleeper app. We've got a survivor pool. Everybody won last week. So the update is the same.
Nice.
No eliminations last week. 6 people are still in contention that have gotten everything right all the way through. So the survivor pool, that's the state of play. If you'll remember, Steve was eliminated very early on. I was eliminated because I forgot to make a pick one week. The pick'em pool. So pick'em pool is essentially what we do here in the show, but using the Sleeper app, and everyone can play along, picking against the spread. We have a new leader. Somebody called New Sport Thought is now top with 57 wins after a perfect week last week. 14-0.
What?
The first, I believe, perfect week in the entire thing.
That's incredible.
So he jumped to the top. I think he's a game clear of everybody else now with 57 wins. I am 10 wins back at 47 wins. You are at 43. So you're 4 games back from me. And the 9-year-old Harry is at 40.
Rough, dude. He's had a rough few weeks.
As he has.
It's been pretty bad.
Yeah. We were all tied a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We were all on the same number of wins, and now I've leapt ahead, and your son has languished behind.
Don't roll with Harry here. He's just hit a bit of a slump here.
Where is he in relation to Bo Nix? Remember that bet?
What's his percentage?
I don't know.
So you got to find his.
I
have Harry's account pulled up here because I'm looking at his
Better.
picks. He's tied for 119th overall. And do we have a percentage? Oh, he's 40 and 52. So that's 40 divided by 92. Oh, he's way behind now. So 40 divided by 92 is 43%. And what's Bo Nix's grade?
43. Bo Nix's grade is, that's 2021. That's not helping. 60.5 or 57.1 as a passer.
Yeah, falling way behind here.
Yeah.
So our listener chose Harry in that whole bet?
I believe so.
Well, we'll see. Well, Bo Nix, he's got a tough challenge here tonight. We'll get into Thursday Night Football toward the end of the show, and we'll have our little prize picks. We'll unveil your lineup for the week.
Right.
And review my lineup for the week for prize picks. So we got a big show.
And if you want to play along, you can find the sleeper leagues in our Discord. You can find the link to the Discord in the description of the show. And that's how you do that.
All right. We ready to go?
Yep.
Omar in the chat was 12-2 last week.
Ooh,
and lost ground in his pool.
Ground?
Everybody had monster weeks last week.
He also says my hair looks good.
Good for Omar. Mine does look good. Look at that today. All right. You ready?
Yeah.
One of the biggest, with 3 monster games, maybe 4 monster games this week. A lot of good stuff here, though. Kansas City Chiefs at the San Francisco 49ers. Of course, we have a Super Bowl rematch here. The Niners are favored by 1.5 here. Chiefs undefeated 5-0 coming off their bye week, early bye for Kansas City. Niners are 3-2. Had the little extra rest. I mentioned this a couple shows ago. They had Thursday Night Football last week. So while Kansas City's coming off the full rest with the bye, the Niners at least have a little extended rest coming off their bye, their Thursday Night Football game last week against the Seattle Seahawks. So a lot of fun storylines and matchups in this one. Where do you want to start?
Well, so to me, this is one of those games where the thing that jumps out to me is one of these, like the sort of shouty show, high level, like nothing narrative type discussions.
Narratives are fine.
It sounds trite, but like, does San Francisco actually want this one more, right? Like, it would be a really tough loss if they lose to Kansas City in their own house, given the Super Bowl loss, etc. Like, this is one of those games where I do wonder if one side actually is significantly more emotionally invested in it than the other.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas City has those there's this feel around Kansas City, who's 5-0, by the way. They haven't faltered yet, but there's this feel that they kind of just get by in the regular season and then unleash the best plays, and they're a little more focused in the playoffs. And whereas we saw the Ravens in week 1 playing that thing, or at least Lamar was playing that thing like an AFC championship.
Right.
Do the Niners come back and do that, right? Look, Kansas City's got 3 Super Bowls in the last 5 years, and a lot of them have come down to a handful of plays here and there, right?
Even this year, like
this year's games,
Baltimore, Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a toe multiple
times.
times.
A pass interference, a 4th down, split back, wide run by Zach. I mean, all these one little play here and there to get to 5-0. I think matchup wise, I'm thinking back to the plays. Like if you're a Niners fan, the missed opportunities that you're thinking of. Brock Purdy with an overthrow in the end zone, a 3rd and 4, where if the Niners can convert, it's essentially ball game in the Super Bowl. And of course, Spags does his blitz, gets an unblocked rusher, batted pass at the line of scrimmage. Can the Niners just make that one play? Can they be the team that doesn't make the big error in the 4th quarter, miss a key field goal, miss an extra point, commit the pass interference? And then I think matchup-wise, we usually start with the Chiefs' offense, but I want to see the Niners' offense against the Spags' defense. And there are some interesting stats to discuss in there. But again, Niners' offense against this Chiefs' defense.
You have stats?
Yeah, I mean, I could go through the stats, or I can let you respond. I didn't know where I wanted to go with that.
Give me some stats.
I had some interesting ones here. First off, Brock Purdy's average time to throw. Did you know he's got the highest time to throw in the NFL this year?
I didn't know it was the highest, but he's always pretty high, right?
Yeah, but he's at 3.36. I didn't realize this till recently. 3.36 is a monster number. And again, time to throw is not, here's how much time the offensive line gave you.
Right.
It's generally a QB-driven number and a scheme-driven number. It's how long did you take to throw the ball? And then how long did you take? There's a lot of scramble around type plays in there from Purdy. But that's like 0.6 seconds higher than last year. So remember I was talking about Tua to Skylar Thompson, about a half-second difference, and how that's a huge difference. That's Purdy playing like that on purpose this year. But it's because he's got about 300 more yards than anyone else on 10-plus yard throws. So it's a different profile of Purdy, and it meshes horribly against Kansas City. Like it's strength against strength, right?
Yeah.
Purdy throws the ball down the field. Chiefs have the lowest completion percentage against on 10-plus yard throws, so something's got to give this week.
I was curious how much that was driven by that Arizona game, where it felt like every single play was him just scrambling around for 7 seconds.
There was a lot. I mean, there's that. But think about Minnesota. Think about Minnesota when they were blitzing him, and we're like, he's not getting rid of it quick against the blitz. He's sitting there, right?
In only one game this year has his average time to throw been under 3 seconds. And that was week 1. So week 1 against the Jets, where theoretically you would be like, okay, let's do this quick, right? Let's get the ball out fast. 2.68 seconds according to PFF Plus. Every week thereafter, it's been over 3, and that Arizona game was 3.7.
That's a monster
which
number.
Wasn't even the highest of his season. Against the Rams, it was 3.75 on average. That's insane.
It's a weird style, man. Because I'm going to make another ridiculous statement here. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Brock Purdy, when he scrambles around, I think he has Mahomes-like. I'm going to compare him in this one specific area. He has Mahomes-like spatial awareness. I think we've seen elements of that through the years. I don't think he's as good as Mahomes at it. The spatial awareness, the idea of like, I'm going to get 7 yards when I need 6. But Purdy's ability to throw back across his body, his ability, he's got second most first downs on scrambles of any quarterback in the NFL this year. I think he's outstanding at that. We knew he had it early in his career where we said, hey, he's adding this element that Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't add to this Niners offense. But now I'm starting to think it's Mahomesian as far as his ability to know when to throw back across his body properly, to know the risks that he can take, and know when to scramble and how to pick up key plays. So I think all of that is going to be an important part of this game. Purdy making special plays, of which he's made way more of those this year than in previous years.
I'm definitely not going to try and do it now because it would just implode the laptop, but I'd be really curious if there has ever been a game like that game he had against the Rams where his average time to throw was 3.75 seconds and he ended up with a 91.8 passing grade. That's absurd. Like, that doesn't happen normally. Like, any quarterback that takes that amount of time on average I think it was last week, Tom Brady, somebody had one of those plays. Purdy, scrambling around, whatever. It took 6 seconds, got the ball out. And then they joked. It's like, hey, Tom, what was your highest average time? Or what was the longest you ever took with the ball in your hands? It's like 2.5 seconds,
Yeah.
3.75 on average is a lifetime. Like, that's nuts.
It is. The other thing I wanted to study and research at some point, Purdy, that profile of like super high time to throw, a good passing grade, so good efficiency, and a lot of downfield throws. That profile, I believe, is unique historically. The other profile that is unique historically is Patrick Mahomes on the other side, where he's been pretty effective. I mean, there's a lot of the advanced numbers have the Chiefs about middle of the pack offensively, but Mahomes has one of the lowest average depth of targets of any quarterback in history, dating back to 2006 when this stuff started to get tracked. Jaden Daniels has his own unique profile. There's a lot of QBs with unique profiles when we look at their style this season.
If you were throwing it on some kind of clustering graph, it would probably be fairly close to peak Russell Wilson, right?
Yeah, Russ with the super, but like Purdy's sack percentage isn't that high, right? So you're not getting. I think Purdy's much better this year, doing it in a unique style. Maybe it is a little Russ-like, and the Niners are sitting here at 3-2. But I don't want to overrate that record. I think they're a couple plays away from 5-1, right? So I still think they are very good. That's why they're favored by 1.5 here. And I think Purdy has gone from super yak dependent in that offense where he'd make a few special throws and plays here and there to like, hey, they're chucking it down the field and getting all their playmakers involved. Mm-hmm. And on the other side, Niners are looking pretty good defensively. They can rush the passer a little bit, not as effective as previous years. I want to see Nick Bosa against Juwan Taylor, that one-on-one matchup, and see if the Chiefs can get anything going offensively. I think the last time we saw them, Mahomes probably had that offense probably had their most efficient game against the Saints. You have a quirky end zone interception that made things a little bit worse, but they moved the ball as effectively as they have all season. And they did it with the run game quite a bit with Kareem Hunt against the Saints.
I mean, that's going to be fascinating. Like, the Chiefs' offense is still evolving through necessity at this stage, right? All the injuries that they've dealt with. Like, remember, there was you lose Rashee Rice, and all of a sudden Juju Smith-Schuster pops up with a massive game. And he's the guy that naturally sort of fits into that role of the slot possession, move the chains type of dude. We'll figure out where we can take the shots with Xavier Worthy throughout the game, but we need someone that can consistently move the chains. And it'll be Travis Kelce to a large degree as well, because he's always been that guy, but the receiver that helps do that. See, this was the thing that made Tyreek Hill so special, is he could do both, right? He could be Xavier Worthy and Juju Smith-Schuster at the same time.
So true.
And then when you get rid of him, you have to replace each component separately, because you're not going to find another guy that can do all of it, at least not without, major investment or major resources in the thing. So Juju, I think, can be that move the chains possession guy the same way Rashee Rice was, and then Xavier Worthy can take the top off the defense and give you that speed, the explosive plays. But it will be interesting to see if that was, a one-time thing until teams figure out, okay, that's what it's going to be, or if that can consistently be the answer for them now. This like throwback offense where Kareem Hunt is going to be the running attack, Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be the slot guy, and then the new gimmick is the speedster that we drafted in the first round.
They're also tight end heavy. I mean, the Chiefs are starting to look. They're always going to be compared to the last dynasty, which is the Patriots. The Patriots were known for their ability to morph offensively from 3 wide to 2 tight ends to run heavy to pass heavy, whatever it was. We saw a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets, and they went big to throw the ball down the field, big to get the ball, to run the ball, but also to create play action opportunities. Chiefs have that ability to morph, and Andy Reid is so good at playing to his players' strengths, and he's looking like he's going to be able to do that again.
And I'm 100% invested in this idea that Travis Kelce was just out of shape in the offseason because he was touring the world and taking acting classes and whatever. His last 3 games, right? So the first 3 weeks, he had 4 targets, 3 targets, and then 6 targets. That 6-target game sparked an increase, a leap in his production and his usage. 6 targets became 9 targets, became 10 targets, 4, 7, 9 catches. Yardage went up as well. And his grade last time out was the highest of his season so far. So it's a really small sample size, but we were ramping right up to vintage Travis Kelce, and now they need him more than they have earlier in the season. Now he also goes up against Fred Warner in large part. So that'll be a hell of a matchup.
But last thing I just want to highlight, and then we'll make our picks. The Fred Warner factor. I just think for the Niners to win this game, their special players need to make special plays. Whether it's Bosa, Fred Warner, Purdy, Ayuk, Debo, they need to make special plays.
And as much as they've been banged up, they still have a lot of those guys. I mean, Fred Warner and Nick Bosa are two of the Defensive Player of the Year candidates this year, and in any year. And they have both of them playing on the same defense.
And here's how this is Spags D in a nutshell, and why you have to make special plays offensively against him. They're number 2 in success rate allowed against the run, so percentage of plays that are considered successful. And again, that completion percentage allowed on 10-plus yard throws, best in the league. They make the windows small. They make the margin for error really small for the offense. So you have to hit on some of those big plays, like I said with Derek Carr the other day. Keep chucking it down the field, and if you hit 3 of them, that's your only chance. So right. I think that the Niners have to make some of those special plays to pull this off. Niners by 1.5 at home, 425 on Sunday. Where are you going with this one, Sam?
I'm going to go with the 49ers. I'm buying into that initial instinct, which is I think this game means more to them than it does the Chiefs.
I'll take the Chiefs. Chiefs as underdogs. I know it's not a lot of points, but I'll take Kansas City on the road here. They have beaten the Niners the last few times, including the regular season in 2022. And Harry will also take the Chiefs in this one. Another awesome matchup on Sunday. 1 o'clock game, Detroit Lions at the Minnesota Vikings. You're undefeated. Vikings also coming off a bye. They're 5-0. Lions are 4-1 now, I believe. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we get the records on the graphic? Can we fit records on there?
Steve needs help now.
I don't have the standings
they are 4-1.
directly.
They're 4-1.
They are.
They're 4-1. Let's go.
Love this matchup. Lions and Vikings. Brian Flores against Ben Johnson. Jared Goff against Flores and the Vikings defense. I have some numbers on those in a minute too, but discuss.
Yeah, I mean, really excited. This is one where both sides of the ball are absolutely fascinating. I mean, genuinely, this is one of the matchups of the season, and we get to see it twice this year.
I love it. Love it so much.
Each side of the ball is amazing. Like, you can argue this is the best coached game we're going to see ever, or not ever, this season, you know what I mean? And we're going to see it twice. As I said. So on the one,
You're telling me
one side of the
Belichick
ball,
versus Urban Meyer a couple years ago wasn't the one?
On one side of the ball, you've got Brian Flores and this defense that is absolutely wrecking people this year. And he's going up against Ben Johnson, who's arguably the sort of finest coordinator mind who's not yet a head coach in the NFL. So that's phenomenal. And on the other side, you've got Kevin O'Connell and this like miracle he's working with Sam Darnold on offense, and they're going up against this Lions defense, which is all of a sudden a question mark because their best player just got taken out with a broken leg. I am wildly fascinated by what the first part of that is going to be, this Ben Johnson versus Brian Flores thing. We've gone through this season, like all the offenses, in particular, the Shanahan derivatives that Brian Flores has been destroying over the last couple of years since he's been in Minnesota. Obviously, they played twice last year, the Detroit, Minnesota. Both times, Detroit was the team that found the antidote or seemed to be able to completely neutralize this defense, but they faced each other in Week 16 and Week 18 last year, right? So 2 games right at the end of the season. In those 2 games, the Lions offense put up 403 and 381 yards. They had 22 possessions across those 2 games, which resulted in 7 touchdowns and 1 field goal. So this offense was able to diagnose what was happening with that defense, but it was at the end of the year, whereas the other teams that we're talking about faced this team much earlier. So how much of that was Ben Johnson has the keys, and how much of that was they had 15 weeks of tape that nobody else had?
And to be clear, I think last year's Flores defense isn't like this year's
right. Well,
Flores
it's certainly not as good. You know,
yeah.
I mean, he was making a lot
But even like stylistically, he's doing different stuff this year than he did last
right,
year.
But a lot of similar things. It's just that, again, we referred to it last year as the miracles he was working with smoke and mirrors, right?
Yeah.
And there's only so long you can do that before teams start to figure out the plan, right? But that changes when you have players that can win in given situations. And they have much better players in several spots this year relative to a year ago.
Here's the other stat I wanted to add to that, because you're talking about how much total yards for the Lions and scoring, and it was all very impressive from Detroit. Jared Goff in particular, when he blitzed, and we talked about this in the previews and the review shows last year, they blitzed him like crazy, because that's what Brian Flores does. Right. 55 times they blitzed Jared Goff. He went 43 for 55. Imagine this as a game line.
Right.
43 for 55 for 493, 3 touchdowns, no picks, a passer rating of 122.2. The other key number, 0 sacks.
That's the huge one.
Right? You didn't even, give up these big plays in exchange for 5 or 6 sacks. So for whatever reason, after the smoke and mirrors all last season, other teams had some issues against this Vikings defense, and Detroit didn't. Mm-hmm. The narrative you're bringing up is interesting. Like, they had the whole season to see it. Does that matter? Because this year's Vikings defense looks better. It hasn't faltered yet, really, other than garbage time against the Packers, basically, when it was in a blowout.
Yeah.
They've made everybody look bad. The other thing that Minnesota is doing really well this year is stopping the run. They're doing it with run blitzes effectively, lowest EPA per play allowed on run blitzes per PFF, and they've just done a much better job making teams one-dimensional as well, and that's where the Lions like to shine, right? The Lions balance on offense where they can power run, they can run outside, they can run play action off it, they have yak guys, they have deep threats. Can Minnesota take a couple of those away? And I think that's how you slow this Lions offense. You got to take a couple of those away, make them a little bit more one-dimensional, whatever that dimension might be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be really interested to see if facing the Lions earlier in the season, excuse me, has an effect relative to last year, where they had 15 weeks worth of tape on this Flores defense. This year it's been absolutely destroying very good teams, very good quarterbacks, and even the most impressive thing, I think, I can sort of live with the idea that there's a certain schematic matchup or advantage that Flores has versus Shanahan systems. But when he then made Aaron Rodgers look clueless, a guy that's seen everything in the last 18 years or whatever of play, and he was confused the same way young quarterbacks have been confused as well. That suggests to me that this defense right now is cooking in a way that they're not just going to run into a team that has the answers to everything they're doing, at least not now. Maybe it'll happen in week 15, 16, 17 again. But right now, I think this is a defense to be reckoned with.
The whole Flores thing is just so interesting, because the other part of this was when he came out of New England was playing about 50% man coverage back in 17, 18, 19. Flores leaves New England, goes to Miami, carries over the same scheme. It didn't work early, but eventually it clicked, right? But it was still one of the most man-heavy schemes in the NFL. They're playing less man than any other team in the league. Flores has completely changed stylistically, and then it's almost like every team has that disguise package, right? We all mug the A gaps and we do sim pressures and stuff. He's just put all those pages at the front of the playbook over the last couple of years and said, this is what we're going to live in. This is what we're going to emphasize. If you could figure it out, great, but we're just going to cause enough confusion, hopefully, that you're going to miss those key throws, miss a few plays here and there on 3rd and long that'll give us opportunities to, get off the field.
It's also amazing how fast things change in the NFL, where we're a couple of years removed, maybe even 1 year removed from Vic Fangio's defense being the cutting edge of defense, right? This is what we're trying to get to, this propensity for too high and, relatively consistent looks, right?
Right.
But just executed really well, versus Brian Flores, whose entire defense is characterized by chaotic looks, sort of almost resembles a Rex Ryan defense more than anything else, the way they just mix everything up and you never know who's coming in from where. And it's absolute controlled chaos from a defensive point of view. They couldn't be much further apart from a schematic sort of philosophical point of view, right? And yet Brian Flores right now, you would argue that's the cutting edge defense in today's NFL. Meanwhile, the sort of Fangio defenses are struggling a little bit more than they have in the last couple of years.
But it's similar to the Ravens scheme. There's some similarities to it. Not as it's the Ravens, the Chargers.
The Ravens scheme? Is that what you said?
Yeah, the Mike McDonald stuff, right? That's going around the league. There's the similarities there are sim pressures and, havoc around the line of scrimmage and confusion, but also keeping a cap on the top of the defense,
both those schemes
right?
have sort of in the space of a year, basically, we've pivoted away from, it's like the meme, the guy walking hand in hand with the girlfriend, and then, ooh, look, like Flores is over here. And Vic Fangio was the girlfriend in walking hand in hand. Yeah, in the space of like a year.
One last old school thing to remember here. Jared Goff against the old the zero blitz. That was Flores was there in 2018 when Goff didn't handle that all-out blitz very well in the Super Bowl. It happened when the Rams played the Dolphins and Flores. The Vikings still like to send the house, right?
Yeah.
More than most. Again, so they've got that whole variety, and it'll be interesting. Like could come down to one of those very specific plays, right? When Flores sends the house, how does Goff handle that? Again, last year handled it great to the tune of almost 500 passing yards. Think about that, 500 passing yards across 2 games against the blitz alone. But there's also this history of Flores getting him. And so my high-level thoughts on this game, which QB takes care of the ball, Sam? Because Goff had his turnover issues earlier in the year. He's played really clean ball the last few weeks. Sam Darnold, he's thrown like the key interception in certain games that the Vikings have overcome. And overall, I think he's played pretty well. But like, which QB takes care of the ball in this one?
Yeah, and also, that side of the ball. Number one, does the Lions' defense kind of just fall apart without Aiden Hutchinson? I mean, it's impossible to overstate the impact he's been having on their defense so far this season with just the volume of pressure he was getting. Now, again, you have to add the context of he literally hadn't faced a real offensive tackle yet. I mean, Terrence Steele was the first quote-unquote real offensive tackle he's faced in terms of a starter, and he's not even close to the player he was before he was injured. I mean, he is a substandard starter now as opposed to a decent one. So Aiden Hutchinson racked up 45 pressures in 5 games going up against backups, and the teams were trying to stop that happening, right? Like, they knew, Aiden Hutchinson against Stone Forsythe is a matchup problem. Let's make sure that doesn't kill the game. And it was still wrecking shop, right?
Still a problem.
Yeah. So that's double impact. Number one, he's getting 10 pressures a game going up against that backup with all the chip help and the protection sliding his way, et cetera, et cetera. But also, he's making that happen. Like, he's ensuring that chip help is coming in his direction and they are sliding in his direction, which is opening up things for other people. Now, both those things are gone. He's no longer generating 10 pressures a game because he's on the sideline with a broken leg. And teams have the freedom to no longer have to slide a back or a tight end or the protection that way every single play. So that has, I think, a double negative effect on this defense, which will be interesting to monitor. And then, of course, the other aspect is Sam Darnold for 2 weeks in a row now has taken a slight step back relative to the early season, amazing play. The first one didn't really show up in terms of stats. The second one did a bit. Is that a trend or just a bad couple of weeks? Bad, relatively, what I mean?
I think he had Jets pass defense makes life a little bit difficult. I think he just, against Green Bay, put the ball in harm's way a couple times, but still made some huge throws.
Yeah.
So, Darnold's development here. And the other thing about the Lions is they're playing a lot of man coverage this year, too.
Yep.
And that leads to, can they cover Justin Jefferson without grabbing him, without holding him? There was a lot of the Jets had a lot of penalties in that game, too, that didn't show up in Darnold's stat sheet. Mm-hmm. And, the Lions have been kind of grabby in the secondary because they're playing a lot of man. So that's, something to keep an eye on as well. One other thing I just want to shout out here in the Goff discussion before we make our picks, the 33rd team, if you go at the 33rd team FB on X, follow them, of course, because we are powered. We are the 33rd team here. Jared Goff numbers against the blitz this year. 73% completions is 5th. 0.56 EPA per dropback is 1st, 13.9 yards per attempt is 1st, and a 137.5 passer rating is 2nd in the NFL. So Jared Goff and the Lions, all of those, some team-centric stats there, unbelievable so far this year and going up against the blitz-heavy Flores scheme. So can't wait to watch that. 1 o'clock on Sunday. The Vikings are favored by 1.5 here.
Okay. I'm going to take the Detroit Lions. And I'm not going to lie, it's a pretty significant emotional hedge.
Yeah. I'm using emotions here because I'm sick of the Vikings fans coming back and be like, you picked against my team again. You picked against my team.
It's not emotions. You just caved to peer pressure is what you're saying.
Again, you know me. I caved to the Lions social media team that one time.
Yeah.
Because they called me out in an old takes exposed video.
Right.
I don't like that. I don't want that to happen.
No, you're apparently very susceptible to peer pressure.
Detroit's like the best team to watch, right? But Minnesota's close. Detroit's got all the players that I love, and we love the way they play, and they bite ankles, and they get after it. But Minnesota is going to win and cover. They're going to miss Hutch.
Okay.
Because I'm sick of the Vikings fans.
Because you're sick of Vikings.
I have enjoyed watching your team this year. We just bring, normal down the middle analysis here. Harry's taking the Vikings as well here. 50.5 over under. They think it's going to get wild in Minnesota. It's going to get wild. Speaking of wild, we got another Monday Night Football doubleheader, Sam. First game. Now they're testing a lot of stuff here. This one's at 8:15. It's an 8:15 and 9 o'clock doubleheader. So now they're keeping us up late on the East Coast here. East Coast dads. Shout out to JJ and his trademark, East Coast dads. It's a rough night for them, for us. Baltimore Ravens at the Tampa Bay Bucks. The Ravens favored by 3.5 here in Tampa Bay. Monday Night Football at 8:15. They'll also be Chargers Cardinals starting at 9. Again, the old school Monday Night Football start time.
Mm-hmm. The last time that Lamar Jackson played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he won, but it was an interesting game because he only had 10 scrambling yards. They did a pretty good job of bottling him up, keeping him in the pocket. The running wasn't overwhelming either, like his design runs. He had a relatively low output game generally, like he had 238 passing yards, something like that, and was pretty.
The rest of the running backs run all over the Bucs, though.
Yeah, but like my point being, they kept Lamar Jackson to this weird game not weird game, but an unusually styled game where he was just quite efficient from the pocket, like non-explosive necessarily, but had one turnover-worthy play, not an overwhelming passing day, just sort of an efficient chain-moving performance.
This was 2022, right?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to reference this was the game where people caught on to the fact that Devin White wasn't actually that great.
Yeah.
Because he kept, getting blocked 20 yards down the field in this game, in that game. So, yeah, I mean, that's what makes the Ravens so dangerous, and they're probably even more dangerous now than they were then.
Yeah. Gus Edwards, so Lamar Jackson had 43 rushing yards in the game. Gus Edwards had 65, Justice Hill had 28, Kenyon Drake had 62, Devin Duvernay had 33, for a total of 231 for the Baltimore Ravens at 7 yards per clip.
Yes, that's what I remember, is they could run at will, and even in a game when Lamar doesn't necessarily have to do it, he creates the numbers advantage, right? He creates those blocking advantages. That's why Vita Vea is healthy, right? Every time I say a player's name at this point in the season, I'm like, is he healthy?
Look at this, by the way.
Vita Vea's got to have a huge game.
You with your diva-like requests, your riders for this show.
Oh, the records are there.
Ben Allen is in here on the fly adding records to the graphics so that your dumbass can remember what everybody's record is.
Love you, Ben. That's awesome. Now I can just read the screen.
Right. They don't have to remember anything. It's all there for you.
I just hope Ben's not the guy like 10 years from now that's like, man, working with Steve was the worst.
Right. He's remembering all this. It's going in the notebook.
Such a diva. He would make demands of me and never thank me, And Janko, they're just sitting there writing, keeping notes. Tyler's got a whole notepad from the last few years working with him, He's got notebooks full.
Mm-hmm.
See? Look at that. Love you too. You're pretty handy just throwing text up there. Now, next one, can I get closed captioning for everything I say? Can you just type everything that I say? Everything I say up there. Oh, this is fun. If you didn't catch our Wednesday show, I know we know what the numbers say, right? Most of our listeners listen to Monday and Thursday, the reviews and the previews. If you're missing the Wednesday show, you are missing some unbelievable fun, because we know not as many people listen on Wednesday, but you're missing a lot of fun on Wednesday. It's when we have the most fun. We got to be all business here on Monday and Thursday. Just talk about the football games. We had a lot of fun on the Wednesday show. So we just deviated, had a little fun here.
Nice.
Vita Vea versus Tyler Linderbaum is a matchup I want to see. Like, this feels like one of the games where Vita, again, he's healthy, right? has to dominate up front for the Bucs, because Vita's the type of guy that can offset the numbers advantage, right? The numbers advantage being Lamar Jackson cancels out a defender, so Vita Vea has to cancel out an offensive player by destroying blocks, blowing up the middle, slowing down Derrick Henry when he's running it, and then making Lamar Jackson make more difficult throws, essentially taking the run game away from Baltimore.
Yeah, and they need him to play in a different way than he's been playing for a while. Like, he hasn't been acting as the sort of the almost the player you're describing, the two gapping, run stuffing, space plugging defensive tackle. His biggest impact has actually been coming on pass rushes, just like collapsing the pocket, which is almost the last thing you want to do against Lamar Jackson, right? Collapse the pocket, get him moving, and he's in space, running. We don't have anybody that can stop that. You actually want him to have his biggest impact in the run game and play in a different style. He's capable of it, but it is an unusual dynamic where you're taking that guy and almost switching what you're asking him to do.
On the other side of the ball, Tampa Bay's offense, we just saw last week, Sean Tucker with his monster game. Bucky Irving's been running the ball really well. Rachaad White coulda, woulda, shoulda be back here this week. They're talking about the three-headed monster in the backfield. Tough to ignore what Tucker did last year. Undrafted free agent in 2023, was outstanding against the Saints. So the Bucs getting the run game going, I think, is important because they've been pretty effective throwing the ball, spreading the ball around to Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, getting the backs and tight ends involved in the pass game. Baker's generally played pretty well this season, but the run game adds that extra balance. That's why they had almost 600 yards of offense against the Saints. Baltimore, though, old school Baltimore, very effective against the run, one of the best success rates against, number 6 EPA per play against. They have the opportunity to slow things down. They're just very fundamentally sound. They just slowed down Washington's very good run game last week. I know they didn't have Brian Robinson last week, but Baltimore just sits there, blows up blocks, sits in their gap, fundamentally sound, make you earn it in the run game. So I think they're going to they have a chance to make Tampa Bay one-dimensional as well. And then, comes down to Baker and those pass catchers making plays.
The Ravens are fun because they've maintained this sort of very unusually constructed defense that I think a lot of teams are starting to think about swinging back towards. They seem to have either intuitively or been ahead of the curve analytics-wise and numbers-wise, understood all the way along the value of what you would see as quote-unquote one-dimensional run-stuffing nose tackles, right? They have always maintained multiple big-bodied guys on the line of scrimmage. Brandon Williams, then Michael Pierce twice. He went away and came back. Travis Jones, who they drafted. They've always maintained at least a couple of those guys that can plug gaps up front, force you to do something other than run up the middle, and then that's where they can exploit you with pass rushers or with actual sort of penetrating defensive tackles like Matabike. It's an interesting defense that they've consistently sort of kept as a style. And
the other one thing I'll add to that, Travis Jones playing really well this year, the nose tackle that you mentioned, or defensive tackle that you mentioned. He was a third-round pick in 2022, pick 76. That was the year Jordan Davis went 13th overall to Philadelphia. Everybody's like, do you need this guy? Do you need this guy to build around your defense? Well, Travis Jones playing as well, if not better, than Jordan Davis, getting him about 60 picks later in the draft. The Ravens, the pick after that, got Kyle Hamilton. So, again, you just look at the team-building effort of Baltimore, and it is generally on point. That's nothing against the Eagles. I'm just saying
but it's a good example.
They got him in the third, and he's a very effective player, especially in today's NFL.
And it's a good example of how, it's tough, right? I don't even know. There are definitely times where chasing the freaky athlete is important. But this is a good example of why it doesn't always work out, right? College-wise, now different level of competition, but college performance, you can definitely argue Travis Jones was just as good a player, if not better, than Jordan Davis. But Davis is the guy that at 345 pounds ran like a 4.8 or whatever. And you're like, that's otherworldly freaky, right? You don't find that ever. So we take that guy in the first round because if it all comes together, we've got a singularly unique player that nobody else can replicate. Or you take a guy who's at least as good, if not better, on the field, who probably doesn't have that utterly freaky upside, but we get him in the third round, and the chances are he's as good, if not a better player. It's just, this is why drafting is hard, because sometimes you look at genius, because you went after the athlete, and that guy hit the high end of his range of outcomes, and now you have a player that nobody else can replicate. Or he doesn't get any better, he's the same guy, and the guy that you could have gotten several rounds later is just as good, and you look like an idiot.
Yeah. And we're not saying you look like an idiot, but like I say, good job by the Ravens finding Travis Jones in round 3.
Yeah.
All right, let's make our picks. Also, really quick, Baltimore's pass defense hasn't been as good this year. Some fun matchups. Brandon Stevens has some size going up against Mike Evans. Nate Wiggins lacks size if he gets matched up with Mike Evans, but he fits better against Godwin. Like, there's some interesting matchups on the back end there for Baltimore.
Meanwhile, Baker is like leading the league in touchdowns by several and is generally cooking people right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, if Tampa Bay has to throw the ball, I think they have the ability to move the ball through the air once again. So I think it could be a Baker-heavy game again for the Bucs. Baltimore favored by 3.5 here. Where are you going?
Going with the Baltimore Ravens. I have more confidence. I think that they are in that groove right now where they look like the best team in the NFL, and they tend to do that every now and again. I just have more confidence in that remaining than Tampa Bay, who still feels a little hit or miss, inconsistent, could show up, might not show up. This is the type of game where they might not show up, and then Baltimore just wins.
I was going to say something similar. Baltimore's in that groove. Could see them getting up 2 or 3 scores. Tampa Bay working their way back into it. We've seen that game flow for both of these teams over the last couple of years. Give me the Ravens to cover the 3.5. Harry will take the underdog Bucs on Monday Night Football. Game 1 of your doubleheader.
Game 1.
All right, everybody. This episode is brought to you by Manscaped, the global leader in men's lifestyle and grooming. Introducing Manscaped's newest innovation. It's the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver, the game-changing tool that brings the luxury of a professional shave right into your own home. Whether you're after that daily, silky smooth finish or prefer to maintain a rugged 5 o'clock shadow, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver is your go-to for precision and style every single time. So head over to manscaped.com. Join the over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using the code Mike20. It's right there up on the screen, Mike20. Get you 20% off plus free shipping. So what makes the Chairman Pro stand out is, well, it's all about the versatility, the precision. Comes with 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads. You have the skin-safe 4-blade foil for that close, smooth shave when you're looking to become completely clean. And if a clean shave isn't your style, as I mentioned, you get the skin-safe stubble trimmer. That's what I would use. That's what I use.
I'm waiting for you. Got to be getting close to that point.
Keep your stubble looking sharp and polished. End of the week, I'll do my shave here. Mm-hmm. And I will fully report back the stubble trimmer. That's me right here. You need the dome shaver. You're asking for the dome shaver.
I need the dome shaver.
You are once again asking for a dome shaver to be sent here. I love the advice you got from Rondé yesterday.
Yeah, that was dangerous. Straight razor.
You might never want him as a guest because he suggested the straight razor.
It's just that feels like. I mean, he was like it took a lot of time to learn that. There's a lot of nicks, and you
got to put the time in. You got to put the time in.
But no, it's not just time. Injury. There's a lot of cuts to the head with a straight razor. I want to bypass the cut to the head part and just shave it.
The Chairman Pro could handle anything, though. Up to 5-day growth. It's perfect for shaving every day or just tidying up after a few days. So you guys have a chance to get it for 20% off. Get the Chairman Pro today. Experience a shave that is as smooth as you deserve. 20% off plus free shipping with the code Mike20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code Mike20, MIC20 at manscaped.com. All right, Houston Texans at the Green Bay Packers. Packers favored by 2.5 here, Sunday at 1 o'clock. It is a battle of the 2 quarterbacks who last year had the almost exact same stat line during wild card weekend of the playoffs, C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love. And we had the task of going on to the old podcast, this show, though, different name, and explaining to J.J. Watt why they had different production grades in that particular game. But yeah, C.J. Stroud versus Jordan Love, a battle of two guys battling for top 5 QB status in the coming years here.
Just think, when that happens this year, it's somebody else's problem.
Yes, if we will use and reference PFF grades, I still believe in them. I believe they are the best way of isolating individual play.
But when they don't jive with the narrative, it is no longer our job to defend them.
If there's a discrepancy in the grade and the production, and there are questions, you can't direct them to us anymore. Someone else has to answer.
Talk to Trevor. It's no longer our problem.
Go see Trevor. Go ask the PFF NFL podcast guys. They'll give you the answer. Mm-hmm. So I'll still use them and reference them. I love them. But we don't have to, solve the problems at this point, which is great. So it's a good battle here. But this just reminds me of, those 2 guys, especially at the end of last season, future's bright for Stroud and for Love. We haven't seen, it's been less consistent for Love this year. He's had the injury and everything, but he's still second in the league in touchdowns despite missing a couple of games.
Yeah, he has. And it's probably not quite like the first half of last season. I think he's overall better than that, but it's sort of a little reminiscent of that in terms of the inconsistency. To me, though, that's obviously where the attention is going to go, Stroud versus Love, the top two quarterbacks. I don't think Green Bay's defense is getting enough notice so far this season. These are two top 10 defenses in terms of EPA per play. Green Bay's are sixth in scoring drive allowed rate. Like, this is a good defense. We saw what they did to Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. They were suffocating that offense, which, okay, that's an inconsistent offense itself. It's capable of hit or miss games, but they couldn't get anything going against the Packers. So I'm really fascinated to see what they can do against this Houston offense, which is really good. Stroud, even without Nico Collins, we saw both Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell sort of step up with an increased role, with increased responsibilities. So to me, that's the fun part of this. Like, how does each, obviously we're going to focus on Love versus Stroud, but like, how does each defense do against those quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think the Green Bay defense, I think we forget how bad they were at times last year, and they've definitely played way more consistently this year. We've highlighted some of the young players that they've been putting out there the last couple weeks, and it's like the same old story. You're finding fourth round Evan Williams, safety, who's made some huge plays the last couple weeks. We've highlighted him in some of the review shows. Edgerrin Cooper, their second round linebacker. Their pass rush has been a little inconsistent, I think, up front. They need to be able to get after the quarterback a little bit more, but they run deep on the defensive line, the Packers. So yeah, it's an incredible matchup. You have Xavier McKinney, who's done a great job patrolling the middle and just forcing turnovers and creating big plays there as well. So a lot of good storylines, I think, on that side of the ball. I think the Texans' ability to run the ball last week with Joe Mixon, two big runs, really, right? They didn't get much going until they ran that little trap play, got him out in space, but two big runs from Joe Mixon that I think adds just a whole nother element to this Texans offense this year. So they have multiple ways to win on offense, multiple ways to win on defense as well. And then the Packers, again, another, spread the ball around, finding ways to get the ball into Jaden Reed's hands. Christian Watson with the huge play last week. He's dangerous. I think you have, keeping him away from Derek Stingley, you have some matchup options here, trying to get Christian Watson into space. And, since entering the league, since like the end of 22, right? The last half of 22, Christian Watson, when healthy, when the hamstrings are, 95% on both sides.
Balanced, yeah.
When balanced hamstring, Christian Watson is one of the best deep threats in the league. How's that?
It's good. It's good. I like that receiving core for Green Bay is still, I don't know what the way, it's confusing, right? It's difficult to pin down in any given week because it's very diverse in terms of skill set. It's very difficult to figure out who's going to get fed in any given game. Is it going to be Christian Watson with a couple of big bombs? Is it going to be Romeo Doubs doing his acrobatics and contortion, skills to get in the end zone? Is it going to be Jaden Reed being a high volume guy? Like, they can go in a lot of different directions with that passing game and all of them be successful.
And the tough part here on Thursday, previewing this thing, is looking at the injury report for the Packers. Here are the questionable players. Tucker Kraft, tight end, questionable. Watson, wide receiver, questionable. Dontavian Wicks, questionable. Jaden Reed, questionable. So there's 4 pass catchers right there. Luke Musgrave, the tight end's already on injured reserve. And then on the defensive side, Devontae Wyatt, Jair Alexander, both questionable as well.
Right.
So we'll see which way that goes for the Packers at this point.
Yep.
I'm a believer in the Texans, though, man. I mean, I really think, look, they took care of business last week against New England. I don't think it's been as clean this year as you would want for a 5-1 Houston Texans team. Look at that record up at the screen. When it comes to my mind, I just look at right at the screen there. 5-1. It's great.
Yeah, that's one.
But they haven't dominated. It's not a dominant 5-1. But I think that's part of what makes Houston so good, is that it can be in different ways every week.
That was one that kind of surprised me. I mean, is that too stupid a thing to say for a team's record after 6 weeks?
That they're just not cooking right now?
No, but it's one where you sort of looked up and you go, oh, wow, they've only lost that one Vikings game. Like, they ran into Brian Flores, who's shredding everybody right now, and that neutralized their offense. Outside of that, they won every game. Like, this is because you're right. It doesn't feel like the Texans have been this overwhelmingly dominant team that's, looking like the best team in football. And yet the only blemish on their record so far is that Flores game.
Yeah. So one other thing, Will Anderson had that dominant outing against the basically like fourth string Patriots tackles. I still think Will Anderson's great. But him and Donnell Hunter against Zach Tom on the right side. Packers have the number 1 pass blocking grade in the NFL. I have high expectations for the Texans pass rush basically every single week. So see if they can get after Jordan Love in this one. Should be a great game.
No, I'm excited for this game. I think it will definitely be a good one.
Some good 1 o'clock games here. So the Packers are going at the same time as Detroit and Minnesota. The NFC North, those top 4 teams all had, the Chicago's on bye, but the top 4 teams all have the best four best point differentials in the NFL. So
and would all make the playoffs if it started today.
Awesome. It'd be great. It's been a fun division to watch this year. All right. Packers favored by 2.5 here at home Sunday at 1.
I'm going to go with Houston. I honestly could talk myself into either one of these teams, though, looking really good and winning this game, but I'm going to lean with the Texans.
Potential Super Bowl matchup here. Texans, I'll take the Texans here, and Harry will as well. Sorry about the Packers hate here, apparently, from us, but we're all taking the Texans to win. A pretty quiet storyline game on Sunday Night Football. New York Jets at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nothing going on here whatsoever. Steelers favorite. No, Jets favored by 1.5 here. Is that right? Is the screen right, or is the is the doc right?
That's one of those lines that could move that way quickly.
Yeah,
because it's within the margins.
I'll tell you what is true. The Jets are 2-4, and the Steelers are 4-2.
Tell you what else is true.
It says it right there.
That Mike Tomlin apparently has been preparing for Devontae Adams for like a fortnight at this stage.
He's like, we knew?
Well, no, because the Steelers were playing the Raiders last week.
Oh, that's right.
So he spent 2 weeks preparing for Devontae Adams. The first time in which he didn't see him because he was still dealing with the hamstring injury.
Yeah.
The second time he should be playing.
Yeah. So the only thing that changes is, hey, he's got a little hammy last week. And now it's like, oh, hammy's good.
And, instead of Minshew / Aiden O'Connell, he's now got Aaron Rodgers throwing him the football.
That might change things a little bit. Yeah, you're right. He's been preparing for Devontae Adams for a while.
The other thing that might change is the Jets have by far the most pass-happy offense in the red zone of anybody. Like they're targeting, they're trying to score through the air when they get to the red zone. So Adams could get like 1 million red zone targets if they're able to get there against the Steelers defense.
I keep going back. I've referenced this a lot, but the 2020 Rodgers season where I thought Matt LaFleur schemed it open in the red zone a lot, and part of that was using Devontae Adams, right? They would use him on motion return. They would do ways to do things to scheme him open, but then there was also he was just a better route runner. So they could run quick outs with him. They could run the fade game, the back shoulder game. I think those are the things, because even if he can't create explosives maybe as well as he had in the past, Devontae Adams, I think just in the red zone adds a massive weapon for this Jets offense that has, again, moved the ball.
Yeah.
They moved the ball better the other night than they did previously.
Red zone, absolutely. I think it's also very difficult to overstate the impact it can have on Aaron Rodgers, who ultimately is not playing badly. I've been making this point repeatedly, but number one, a receiver that you trust changes the passes that you attempt, right? It changes what your decision-making process, right? So much of Aaron Rodgers playing the game is he willing to just take a shot at a given receiver, right? And if he's not, he's going to go on to the next guy and try and do something different and potentially put the ball in harm's way or force a throw that isn't there. He is able to diagnose immediately, hey, this is Devontae Adams, I'm making this attempt, right? It's one-on-one. The other thing is, plays like that Mike Williams play at the end of the game probably don't happen. And that's going to be a lot of the missed throws this year. Not all of them. Obviously, Rodgers has missed them both. The second interception against the Vikings, right? Bad throw. Good decision, reasonable decision, bad throw, bad execution. That's on Rodgers. But there's a bunch where something like that has happened. He's not been on the same page with these Jets receivers. He should be with Devontae Adams, and that, I think, changes everything. It will be interesting, though. Can you just switch that back on after a couple of years? Obviously, they built up this telepathic communication over the years in Green Bay. Each one of them has been in a different place now for a while. Does that just can you flip a switch and immediately it's like we're back in 2017 again?
So the Chiefs do this often, bring back old players like Juju back with the Chiefs. Like Juju went from looking old and like ready to retire with New England to like, oh, by the way, you could just pick up 120 yards whenever Mahomes and the Chiefs decide. I remember Tom Brady, the year they traded Randy Moss, replaced him with year 9 of Deion Branch. Mm-hmm. And Deion Branch and Tom Brady were like, oh, yeah, we haven't played together in 5 years, but boom, here it is. I know we're going to be on the same page. And Brady went on to win MVP. So I think at that level of quarterback, I think they will pick it up fine, right? Even if it's like you're coming off a hamstring, we have other receivers, you're going to play 30 snaps, go run a few routes, get open a few times, and let's go. And that's going to help and enhance that offense. Curious about the run game against a good Pittsburgh defensive front. They got it going with Breece Hall the other night, Braylon Allen. Don't know if they'll be able to do it against Pittsburgh. It might be a pass-heavy attack for the Jets. And then on the other side, almost certainly Russell Wilson getting his first start for the Steelers.
Yeah. And that's obviously going to be interesting to watch. Like,
we talked about that a little bit yesterday, by the way, just a little more detail on the Russ versus Fields thing yesterday.
Yeah, I don't have a particularly strong take on it either way. I think it's okay to see, right?
Yeah.
Like you said all the way along, he's QB1, and I don't think Fields did enough during the time he was starting, particularly in the last couple of weeks, to take that away from him, at which point I'm kind of okay going back to him. Now, other smart people have said he probably makes them worse. I mean, Mina Kimes was pretty strong on ESPN saying this is going to make this offense worse. I don't know that that's that conclusive. It might, but it might make them better. Like
I don't feel that strongly either way.
Yeah, it'll probably make them worse as a running team because Justin Fields is a huge part of that running game, and Wilson can't be anymore, really. But it might make them better as a passer, and that might equal a net positive. So I think it's fine. Like, now, I do think it's risky because you've got a pretty good idea of what the Fields thing is going to look like now. We've no idea what the Russell Wilson thing is going to look like. And you introduce this element of, okay, if this isn't good, how quickly can I get away from it? Like, if this doesn't go well, how fast can you put in the shepherd's crook and drag Russell Wilson off the stage?
Get to see George Pickens versus Sauce Gardner. Feisty little matchup there. I think that's fun. Yeah, I mean, again, go back to yesterday. We talked more about Russ and Fields and how you and I neither of us have let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. I think Fields was better than previous years, but this isn't like, how could you possibly sit Justin Fields? Right. The only thing you're looking at is the record. Because the Steelers, let's be serious here. If the defense hadn't played that well, they could be 3-3, 2-4. And if they're 2-4, a couple plays away from being 2-4, you're not like, man, you can't.
Yeah.
Like if they make, I mean, they're close to being 5-1 too. They lost to the Cowboys on the last play. I get it. So I've been impressed by Fields. I just think the expectations were so low that it's overrating what we think of Justin Fields to this point. TJ Watt versus Morgan Moses matchup.
Boom.
By the way.
Strength on strength.
Strength on strength. You have a Hall of Famer, and he's going to be trying to keep TJ Watt in check.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So the doc, everything, I confused myself. The Jets are favored by 1.5. The document's correct. The graphic is correct. Who are you taking in this one?
I am taking the New York Jets.
I'll also take the Jets. Harry's taking Pittsburgh. Harry's going a little against the grain. Are you and I agreeing on everything here?
He's seen enough of Aaron
No,
Rodgers.
just the last couple. He's out on Rodgers. You didn't know about the Adams trade, though. I don't know. He's in school on Tuesday morning when these trades are going down. He misses it.
Yeah.
So he'll take the Steelers here. Second half of the Monday night doubleheader: Los Angeles Chargers at the Arizona Cardinals. Monday night, 9:00. The Chargers favored by 2.5 here against the Cardinals. The Chargers are 3-2. The Cardinals are 2-4.
Good work. Yeah, nice.
I love that.
I don't know what to make of Arizona in any given week. They are maybe the most confusing team in the NFL to try and project what they're going to do.
Yeah, those 2 wins where they beat the Rams. Kyler played one of the best games of any quarterback all season.
Yeah.
And then
the 49ers.
They upset the Niners.
That's
as
not supposed to happen.
10-point underdogs.
Right.
And depending on how you want to look at that, they forced a fumble in the red zone when the Niners were going to seal the deal on the final drive. And then, look, the Cardinals made a lot of good plays to win it, but the 2 wins were unexpected.
Yes.
So. I'm just going to pick against the Cardinals every week. That's probably where I'm going to land.
Yeah. I mean, they've had a pretty tough schedule as well when you look at like the teams that they played. I mean, they ran Buffalo reasonably close in week 1. It was like, oh, look, Arizona might be feisty. Then they get the win against the Rams where they look spectacular. They lose to Detroit. They lose to Washington, who it turns out are a lot better than people were expecting them to be. Then they get that win against San Francisco, and then they lose to Green Bay in a fairly conclusive beatdown. But the Packers are now looking really good. So, it's a tough schedule, but they just seem to show up for these random games that could come anytime.
I want to put so they're tough to predict, and I want to try to put the Chargers into perspective here. They're sitting here at 3-2. They've already had a bye, so they're a little behind as far as playing football games compared to some of the rest of the league. But what we've seen through 5 games is the run-heavy approach, the slow approach. There's fewer plays, there's fewer points. It's more run-heavy. The pass defense has been fantastic. The run defense has been fantastic. One loss to the Steelers when they lost both tackles. Justin Herbert was battling 3 to 6 injuries in that game, and they lose to Pittsburgh. The following week, they go to the Chiefs with Derwin James suspended, both tackles out again, Herbert with 3 to 5 injuries, and just completely depleted, and they lose by 7, right? They lose by a score. They had a 10-point lead. Chargers might be really good as far as like playing this style, compressing the game, keeping everything tight, and then it comes down to this, hey, let's got to make a few plays down the stretch to win it. So if they are healthy, do they upset the Chiefs that week? And are they sitting here at 4-1? And maybe it's a little different. So I'm trying to the Harbaugh style is implemented immediately. We were wondering how quickly will this happen? They don't have dudes to throw to, so they're going to completely change the game, and they're doing it. So they're a fascinating team, and I don't think they play the Chiefs again until Week 18. I would love to see full-strength Chargers against full-strength Chiefs, and if the Harbaugh style is ready to actually approach them in the West there.
I still can't make any sense of what they've done to Justin Herbert, though. And I understand, as you said, he's been battling multiple injuries for the majority of the season. He has at least one turnover-worthy play, according to PFF, in every game this season. He had 4 consecutive games to end last season without any turnover-worthy plays, and for a period of basically the majority of his career, has had the lowest turnover-worthy play rate in the entire NFL. You're like, if they were going to create this J.J. McCarthy, Harbaugh style of offense, you'd be like, Herbert might actually be phenomenal at that because he never puts the ball in harm's way. Well, they've got him doing that, and somehow it's created this increase in turnover-worthy plays. I don't know why that's happened.
A couple of them, there were fumbles late in the pocket. Did it against Carolina. Was it last week? Trying to make something happen a little late. I don't know if that's a part of it. I don't know if he feels
is this just
really
variance or
contained?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is this just variance, or is restricting how much you let him do anything, essentially? Has that created this kind of dynamic in his brain where he's like, I get one shot this drive, I got to do something good now, right? Almost you remember Caleb Williams felt like every play he had to try and make it at USC.
Yeah. For
a different reason, because he knew that if we fail on this drive, we lose the game because our defense isn't going to stop them ever. Herbert has the same pressure on him, but for a different reason, because it's in his brain he gets X opportunities in the game, and if he doesn't take advantage when they show up, he doesn't get another shot. It's going to be the run game, it's going to be the defense. He's only being given a certain amount of times to actually make a play. Is that creating this false economy in his head where he's trying too much?
I see some of that because I'm looking through last week, fumble in the red zone. That's what it was. I think he ended up recovering. I think he is trying to do too much on those plays. If they weren't sitting here at 3-2, we would be having more of a Justin Herbert conversation here because he's got 6 touchdowns and 1 actual pick.
Yeah.
The turnover-worthy plays, again, try too hard, fumbles in there. PFF passing grade of 58. I mean, this is by far the worst play-by-play grading of Herbert's career. But it's he matters less because they're putting the ball – they don't run as many plays. They're a run-heavy team, and they're playing great defense. So he's kind of having a Justin Fields-like season, basically.
Yeah, but like
they've turned him into whatever Justin Fields is
but like
right now.
Normally you would assume that if you are shrinking down his responsibilities and effectively turning him into a game managing style of quarterback, you would assume that either it would maintain or there would be a corresponding improvement in all of his sort of efficiency metrics. But actually everything is down. Yards per attempt is half a yard. Yards per attempt, is half a yard down from last year. His turnover-worthy play rate, as we said, has spiked. It's doubled. His big-time throw rate is down. His adjusted completion rate is down. His sack rate, or pressure to sack rate, how often do you end up in a sack when you're pressured? Herbert's been really good at that consistently through his entire career. This was the worst percentage of his entire career. Like every efficiency measure of what he's doing is worse than it usually is.
It probably coincides with your receivers are Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer and Ladd McConkey. I think Ladd's been fantastic for a second-round rookie, but like it probably coincides with that in the whole style. It'll be fascinating to watch where Herbert goes. I mean, the other way of looking at this is the Chargers are 3-2, and Herbert hasn't
played well,
sniffed the ceiling that we've seen him have, just the potential that he's had already in the NFL. Never mind like the theoretical potential everybody also thinks that he has. So should be a good one. That'll keep us up late on Monday night. The Chargers favored by 2.5 here at Arizona. I already told you I'm picking against Arizona for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think otherwise. I'm not sure I'm doing it for the rest of the year, but I'm definitely doing it this week.
Give me the Chargers. You'll take the Chargers. Harry also taking the Chargers. Seattle Seahawks at the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons favored by 3 here at home in the Dome. Falcons 4-2. Seahawks 3-game losing streak here. 3-3 going to Atlanta. Over under 51.5. So Vegas expecting some fireworks in this one.
Yeah, I think this will be an interesting schematic matchup, right? We've got the Zach Robinson, Kirk Cousins offense that's been finding its feet, that's been doing a really good job of evolving week on week, now going up against this Mike McDonald defense, which is still a very difficult scheme to diagnose, and a defense that's caused some problems for opposing teams. So how does that chess battle play out?
Just a bunch of kids scheming up against each other. A bunch of 30-year-olds going at it right here. I've said on the last few shows the Falcons have, I think, found their groove offensively. It was the Bucs on Thursday Night Football. It was the Panthers last week. But the Falcons, their ability to get both running backs going, their ability to get all of their pass catchers into the game a little bit more. Kirk Cousins is second in the league, second most yards on 10-plus yard throws. You know, if we said that after week 1 where he was struggling to get the ball outside the numbers, we'd say, no, that's not happening. But they've done a nice job there. They've found a rhythm. They have come out of whatever that week 1 was, where it was like, oh, they're not moving. They're not running play action. Everything's static. It looks awful. Yeah. Against Pittsburgh, it has gotten progressively better. And now against the Seattle defense that has had their issues up front, their injuries up front, they looked unbelievable from a pass defense perspective the first 3 games of the season. But we talk a lot about defense being dependent on who you play, and they played Bo Nix in his debut. They played Skylar Thompson, and they played Jacoby Brissett and the Patriots in those 3 weeks. So Seattle's pass defense doesn't look nearly as good now playing Daniel Jones over the last Daniel Jones, Jared Goff, and Brock Purdy over these last few weeks. So I think both teams have a chance to put up a lot of points. That's why it's 51.5, because the Falcons, I'll say it every week, pass rush is awful.
Yeah.
They have the highest completion percentage allowed on 10-plus yard throws, so they're not doing anything well pass coverage-wise on that side of the ball.
So they're probably missing Justin Simmons, right? And they have that pass rush that doesn't affect the quarterback.
Simmons is questionable here.
Right. I think this has the potential to feed into a really good Geno Smith game. Geno leads the league in passing yards, but a part of that is because they're down a lot of the time. He has a fairly steep drop-off this year in terms of performance when he's kept clean in the pocket versus when he's pressured. And they have a weakness on the interior of the offensive line generally. They've been without a starting right tackle for most of the season. Like the 4/5 of that offensive line essentially at various points in the season have been struggling. All of a sudden, theoretically, all that goes away against Atlanta because they just don't have the horses to exploit it. So if they're able to keep Geno clean consistently in the pocket, I mean, he's a really good quarterback when he's kept clean.
Did you see the first time ever, I think I've probably referenced this, the funny TikTok going around about the Seattle offensive line?
I did not.
Like they had secret agents on the offensive line to blow up the Seahawks offense in Stone Forsythe and Anthony Bradford, because Forsythe has struggled at right tackle. Bradford struggled at right guard. It was just a funny like Seahawk fan video where he's watching all their bad plays, and the fact that Forsythe is almost allowed twice as many pressures as the next worst tackle in the NFL. But it's because here's the deal with Seattle. I love their passing attack potential. I love the pass catcher.
35 pressures in 6 weeks.
Yeah, but they've dropped back a ton.
I know.
It's like 35, and then second place is 19.
Yeah, but that's like a season's worth.
So that is the historic moment. There is I'm getting some information from a TikTok video. Yeah, from TikTok, which came across Twitter somehow, whatever it was. But Seattle, they want to get Ken Walker the ball more often. I think they run like he is a legit game-changing back. Earlier in the season, they did a better job of getting him the ball. Charbonnet can run the ball pretty well. I think they want to get more to the way the Falcons are playing, where you have those games where you get 10 to 15 carries for both guys and you're feeling pretty good about it. And then you can start creating big plays with DK, Tyler Lockett, JSN. They have all these other ways to win, but they've gotten into this game flow where it's all pass, and then it puts a lot of pressure on that offensive line that can't really pass protect.
Just to put some context on that number, Rasheed Walker, Green Bay's breakout left tackle last year, had 36 pressures allowed in 19 games last year. Like, Stone Forsythe has given up 35 in 6 games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was like they dropped back like 70 times. They had 2 games worth of dropbacks against the Lions.
Yeah, but even so, I mean, that's just
15 of them came against Aiden Hutchinson.
An astonishing number.
So, anyway, I think, again, balance is overrated. But when you're in this game script of we have to drop back so many times, it does you lose a little bit of the flow offensively. Because I think Geno Smith overall is playing pretty well, and they have the dudes to throw to. They just need to figure out how to run the ball a little bit more effectively. Mm-hmm. Either way, I think they'll have success against Atlanta. I think we'll see a lot of scoring in this one.
Yeah, I think this is setting up for a good offensive day from Seattle, and then it's the fascinating thing comes down to Atlanta's offense versus the McDonald defense.
All right, Atlanta by 3. Where are you going with this?
I'm going to go with the Falcons. Contractually obliged to support our friend Zach Robinson.
Oh, we are? Is that in the fine print?
Yeah, I put it in there.
Then I'll change. I was going to take Atlanta. I mean, Seattle. I'll take Atlanta, though.
There you go.
To support Zach. Harry will also take Atlanta. He's not contractually obliged because he's 9.
Yeah.
But he'll also take the Falcons. Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns. Sunday at 1. Cincinnati favored by 5.5. Bengals 2-4. Browns 1-5. We spent a lot of this week trashing the Browns. We won't do that today, Tyler.
I mean, we're probably not going to be complimenting them too much.
I mean, they're 1-5.
Yeah.
How good could they be?
And I don't think they're going to win this game. So not that much positive to say.
Amari Cooper, addition by subtraction?
No, subtraction by subtraction.
I mean, story here, obviously, Browns have struggled offensively. The defense is still, I think, difficult to, week to week, they could be really good on the defensive side of the ball. Cincinnati's in this interesting spot where I think every game's like a must-win. I still think Cincinnati's good and can make a playoff run. Joe Burrow's playing as well as he has at any point in his career. They just have to have the record to get into the dance, right? They have to get into the playoffs. And if they do, we'll be, my favorite thing every December, this is not the team you want to play in the playoffs, right? So Cincinnati's trying to set themselves up for they're going to be a 6 seed or a 7 seed, and they're not the team you want to play in the playoffs because they certainly have that potential.
Absolutely. I think that is the interesting side of the ball. Orlando Brown has a surprisingly good record against Myles Garrett when they've run up against each other. You would, in abstract terms, you would say that that's the type of player that would kill Orlando Brown. I don't like that matchup, but he's actually done a pretty good job every time they've run up against each other. Now, I'm sure he's had help, but other players have had help that are worse than Orlando, or that are, at the same kind of level and have been absolutely destroyed by Myles Garrett. So
we've been tracking this for a while, this whole, left tackles against Myles Garrett. Like Dan Moore right now,
right,
for the Steelers is having a career year, pass blocking grade.
And the poor guy still has to run up against him.
But it's is it only because he hasn't faced Myles Garrett yet? You know what I mean? It hurts the narrative. This guy's playing great, and it's why did we not think he was great in previous years because he faced Myles Garrett in week 1 or 2, and it just put him behind. It was
Right.
like, here's,
that's going to take his grade down 15 points for the
Right.
season. And then the second time, it's going to take it down another 15 points.
So maybe we need to be doing like the without. Like Dan Moore's fine without
That's
Myles
the point
Garrett.
I made. His PFF grade for his career minus Myles Garrett games is like 60-something. It's like bang smack average, right? And then you put Myles Garrett games in there as well, and it drops like 20 points or whatever it is. It's like single-handedly responsible for making people think that Dan Moore is not capable of starting football games at the NFL level. Anyway, my point being, you would look at that and say the biggest mismatch the Browns have in their favor is Myles Garrett against anybody.
Every week.
Right, but actually Orlando Brown has done a surprisingly good job of mitigating that every time he's played him, whether it was with Cincinnati or Kansas City when they played them. So I don't know how big a factor that'll actually be. Going back to the Amari Cooper trade, they have taken effectively the worst offensive situation in the NFL and removed the best player from it. I don't see how that makes them better, to be honest. One compelling storyline is how will that defense, how will Myles Garrett go? The Bengals need it. Can their offense still keep cooking against a good, if inconsistent defense? There's, frankly, a car crash television aspect to just watching how bad this thing can get for Cleveland, right? Like, they took the best player off an already wretched offense. How toxic is this going to get over the next few weeks?
I'm curious on the other side of the ball, though. I mean, yes, we're going to watch the Browns and see how
and by the way,
bad it can get.
The other reason to watch this game, we're going to get Nick Chubb debuting.
Nick Chubb's coming back. Now, is he the best player on the team? I know we're anti-running back here. Just saying, Nick Chubb, I think, has been one of the few
he would have been
consistent difference makers at running back over the last few years.
He absolutely would be their best player in abstract terms if you didn't know anything about his knee injury. Now, we don't know what he is now. And look,
He was just squatting 800 pounds this summer, wasn't he? He's good. He'll be fine.
I am rooting hard for Nick Chubb to still be the player he was before that knee injury. But that was a devastating knee injury to a heavy-set, powerful running back. I have no idea how that's going to show up. But rooting for him to still be the same guy.
The other dynamic here, like even if the Bengals were sitting at 4-2, we'd be talking about this trap type game because for whatever reason, Joe Burrow in particular struggled against the Browns. Even when they're cooking, they just seem to lose against the Browns. They had a Monday night game a couple years ago against Jacoby Brissett where the Browns just dominated the game from start to finish. Burrow has a career since 2021, since that Super Bowl season, 65 passing grade per PFF against the Browns. 4 touchdowns, 4 picks, 13 sacks in those 4 games. Like, it hasn't been great for Burrow. There's a pick 6 in there to Denzel Ward in the red zone. I mean, there's a bunch of not good play from Burrow and the Bengals here. So I don't think it's like the 5.5 might be a lot given this history. I just don't know how much to lean into that history or lean into everything that we've cited on the Monday and the Wednesday show of the historically bad Browns offense and where they are right now.
Yeah.
Because it's also been a pretty bad Bengals defense, but they looked better on Sunday night against Daniel Jones and the Giants. You mentioned this a few weeks ago. Their defense should look better in the coming weeks given the matchups.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one because I think the Browns, obviously they just need, if they're going to salvage their season at all, they need every week. And the Bengals do too. I mean, it's like as close to a must-win for both teams if you're talking this season, the 2024 year. And I'll say this every week for Cincinnati in particular because I think they're the most capable of making a Super Bowl run. So that's why to watch. Bengals by 5.5 here.
I'm going with the Bengals. I don't believe in the Browns based on what we've seen so far.
I did my first instinct picks.
Yeah.
And I put Cleveland down. So I think they'll keep it close enough in this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sizable enough line, and they're at home, so it's not crazy.
And again, I think I'm remembering the history. Remembering the history here. So I'll take Cleveland to cover the 5.5 as home underdogs. Harry will take the Bengals here to cover the 5.5. Philadelphia Eagles at the New York Giants. Eagles favored by 3 here in New York. Eagles 3-2 after last week's win. Giants fall to 2-4. But it's been a more competitive 2-4 for the Giants this year.
And theoretically, they're getting Malik Neighbors back.
Neighbors back, missed 2 games with that concussion.
Yeah,
2 games?
Multiple weeks, yeah.
Yes.
So that's huge. I mean, he's their best offensive player based off the evidence so far without Andrew Thomas.
But as we said yesterday, Andrew Thomas out now for the season.
And that's huge.
At left tackle.
So it's tough to know what that nets them. They just lost their best offensive lineman, but they gained back their best skill position player. Like they're almost running an A/B test with the Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell meme. You know, what happens if we take away an elite left tackle and put in an elite wide receiver? Like they
are A/B testing it for real. Huh?
Yeah. And I honestly have no idea what effect that's going to have on this game.
They got one, to just be clear, in Seattle, they got a really good Daniel Jones game where he spread the ball around with no Malik Neighbors, hit 2 deep balls to Darius Slayton.
Yep.
And it was nice. Last week against Cincinnati, it was awful.
Played like crap.
It was the worst we've seen, and it was one of those. They could use a guy like Malik Neighbors to separate on 4th down and to separate, in these key situations. So it's like 1-1 from a record standpoint, but also from just like an effectiveness standpoint without Malik Neighbors.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting to see what effect that has. Like the Andrew Thomas thing is such a big blow to them because number one, he's amazing. He's a really good player at the most important position on the offensive line. Number two, his backup is bad. So it's another one of those sort of double blows. And then the other side of the ball, like if the Giants get anybody that can stop A.J. Brown, like he's so good. And we saw that immediately coming back. And then the other interesting element to this game to me, Saquon Barkley apparently does not expect to receive a hostile reception from the crowd. You know, he doesn't think he's going to get booed. He's like, I did a lot for the Giants down the years, you know. They love me in New York. Like, well, yeah, I mean, they did. I don't know if that's true now that you left and joined the Eagles.
What did the Lions fans do for Stafford? Didn't they give him like an ovation initially? It was like, we'll give you the initial one will be an ovation, then we're going to boo you like crazy after that. It was always like, well, we'll pay our respects, and then you're the enemy. And we'll
But
boo
even
you.
that is very different from you voluntarily-ish departed in free agency and joined the rival, the division rival.
Yeah.
And this is even it.
I think they're going to boo.
And that's before you get to the hard knock stuff where, theoretically they gave the Giants his word that he would allow them match and blah. Like there was some, it didn't seem entirely, not above board. It didn't seem entirely like best good faith negotiating necessarily from Saquon Barkley once they had agreed all that stuff. It's like, yeah, actually the Eagles just gave you a good offer and I'm going there because they're better.
Yeah, I think they're going to boo.
Same, yeah. I don't think that they're going to give him too much credit for what he did for the Giants in the past.
I don't know. I still don't know what to make of the Eagles. I know Walt's in the chat here saying like it's all falling apart. It's going to implode. You got Nick Sirianni yelling at fans and then apologizing after the fact.
His own fans, apparently.
Yeah.
I assumed he was getting into it with the opposition crowd.
No, they're in Philly, and he's yelling at Philly fans. Right? They were in Philly, weren't they?
Yeah, but I assumed it was like Browns fans.
No. He's I don't know, man. Listen, I don't like to
not that either one of them is a good look, but it's more understandable that you're jawing with the opposition fans.
I don't like to criticize people for being emotional. Like I got emotional during baseball games where we played every night. The emotions of a football game where you have one a week and you build up to it, and when you act emotionally, I think we are too harsh on people who have emotional outbursts in an extremely emotional game.
I'll go further.
Let me just start with that.
I'll go further than that. We have normalized people acting like absolute douchebags at sporting events, right?
For fans, you're talking about the fan aspect.
Fans at sporting events have been given the green light to become the most obnoxious human beings that exist, right? And we're just like, oh, that's just how it is. You have to rise above that. Why? Why do I have to rise above that? If that happened and there wasn't a barrier between the two of us, things would get nasty. Why am I expected to go, oh, you're in a stand, so that's cool. I'm just going to turn the other cheek and walk in the opposite direction.
Just because you paid $200 to sit in a seat doesn't mean you can act like that.
Team Ron Artest, right? That guy is 100% right for launching himself into the crowd and drop kicking someone in the face. Team Eric Cantona. Cantona did a flying scissor kick at a fan's face, and I'm sure he was justified for it.
Are you saying I should have gone after the big goofy guy and his 9-year-old?
Yes.
That's where the big goofy story came from.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
I'm just minding my own business against the Iowa Cubs, and this dude's yelling and calling me big goofy, teaching his 9-year-old
incorrect
to call me names as well.
Setting a bad example.
I should have climbed in the stand.
You should have set the correct example by beating him down in front of his 9-year-old.
The guy who kept calling me Oates. He was like, Oates from Hall & Oates. He's like, you're Oates. That guy.
Yeah.
Drunk guy running around in Reno.
I'm saying
should have gone after him.
We have perpetuated this myth that there are no consequences for whatever you say in front of people because it's a sporting event. There are consequences. And if Ron Artest happens to bring you direct physical example of that consequence, it's on you. So what I'm saying is I support Sirianni.
Support Sirianni. Oh, man. I still don't know what to make of this Eagles team generally. I think Saquon Barkley has made an impact. I mean, I've just set my record for running back compliments for a season, and we're just here in week 7.
Pioneering, pushing new ground.
But over 5 yards per attempt, and it's like real stuff, right? He creates a 50-yarder on the regular, and you've got pass game additions that Saquon's added. It is one of those on paper with A.J. Brown, who you said, he's so good. Devontae Smith had the long touchdown last week. Saquon's added value to this offense. Dallas Goedert, they should be better. I'm going to keep going back to they should be better. It's been a weird season watching Jalen Hurts again, not finding rhythm and a lot. I mean, it's been they're 3-2. They're doing all right, but like it should be much better. So again, they're either not finding how to make all these pieces work well. They had some injuries in there as well, I know, or they're like exploding whalish. Like they're ready to explode any given week, and I think it could happen. I'm going to just predict that every week. I'll pick against the Cardinals every week. I'll pick for the Eagles to explode positively every single week.
Yeah. The
Eagles don't have the same pass rush they've had in previous years, but they should be able to take advantage of the Giants.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the reality. Like they're still a better team than the Giants, so I expect them to win. It's kind of that simple.
But I'm glad you encouraged people to attack fans when needed.
Only when,
What about fan-on-fan violence? We see a lot of those nonsensical fights.
Yeah, I mean, look.
Those are just
people
stupid.
but.
You see that Ravens idiot this weekend?
Yes.
That was dumb.
Yeah.
That was really dumb.
Very dumb. There should be a line that you don't cross, period, right? And if you cross that line,
So you want fans to heckle the way Phillip Rivers does?
Just general trash talk.
Yeah, like tactful trash talk. Like Andrew Luck, who used to always do that, right? Good hit, but you were a step too late. I completed the pass. Stuff like that.
No, it's just like when you launch into personal abuse with somebody. Like if you did that in the street, you'd get smacked in the face.
No, I agree. You should avoid that.
Why do we act like the guy? That's not a potential consequence for you doing that just because there happens to be a physical barrier between you and the guy you're yelling at. That's that shouldn't have been like. You ever see those images of in like Premier League soccer, right? Where a guy goes over to take like a corner or a throw in, right? And if you look at the crowd behind him, it's just like 3,000 people flipping him the bird like this. Like, what are we doing? Like, this is insane. That we should not have reached somewhere along the line. We have strayed from the path, and that
it's a Wednesday. It's a Wednesday topic. We'll talk about tactful cheering as fans. Lucrative, and something we can relate to really quickly here. Lucrative in the chat says, you don't see fights at Giant Stadium, though. Their security is effing insane, he says. We can relate.
Giant Stadium as in the baseball?
No, he's talking about the MetLife. But like the Giant security is top notch. From training camp, we were kept in check.
Frank. Whose name isn't Frank.
His name isn't Frank. We called him Frank, and he made sure there was a line to cross, and we didn't cross it. He made sure we were behind the line at all times.
Absolutely.
So you can vouch for that. Giant security from top to bottom, great organization, security-wise.
So essentially, Nick is going to be okay because Frank's going to take care of the trouble before it gets to Nick.
Then there's Dom on the other side, though.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a clash of security people.
Clash. Dom and Frank.
Dom versus Frank.
That's the matchup to watch in this one. Eagles by 3.
Eagles.
Harry? Eagles. Yeah, got it. We're all taking the Eagles. Carolina Panthers at the Washington Commanders. Commanders favored by 8.5.
I mean, at this point, I think it's fair to say that Washington's offense is just really good, as is Jaden Daniels. So to me, like the question is, can Carolina's offense keep pace going up against what is still a bad Washington defense and make this a shootout? If they can't, Washington just wins comfortably. I do think that it creates, so we've said a lot that one of the really impressive aspects of Jaden Daniels is that he has faced a variety of different questions or puzzles or challenges thrown his way already this season. Like every week seems to be a very different test. and he's passing them all. Like he has the answer to every single thing. This one, the test is simply, can you just stomp a defense that you're supposed to stomp, right? Which sounds really easy. Like it's the easier test to take than can you beat the blitz happy team? Can you beat the really good, blah, blah. It's a different test. It is still, however, a significant thing. Like there are players that, the trap game thing, there are players that seem to play down to the level of their opponent. Can he go out there and just beat the crap out of a bad defense? That's this week's test.
The test is, can you beat the defense that we have to preface every time we compliment the team that faced them every week? We preface, it was against the Panthers. I know the Saints look like they're going to the Super Bowl, but it was against the Panthers. I know the Bengals look great, but it was against the Panthers. Yeah. I know the who was it last week? Falcons. Falcons are hitting their stride, but I know it was against the Panthers.
Right.
And can you be the team that's already been great offensively? Can you go up against a team that has Shy Tuttle rushing the passer 57 times this year with 0 pressures? Shy Tuttle, 218 rushes last year with 2 pressures. Right?
I haven't checked that NGS stat, what his get-off rate is now, and it's a bit deeper into the season. We have a bigger sample size.
It's like the same as Jaden Daniels' time
he had
to
the
throw.
early in the season, after a couple of weeks, his get-off time was like 1.6 seconds or something, which apparently is the time taken to cross the line of scrimmage.
I'll have to test this. Was it, remember Tyson Jackson, number 3 overall pick with the Chiefs? He had those years. He'd have a full season with 7 pressures.
Right.
That was early. We always make our early PFF references. Shy Tuttle has 40 career pressures on over 1,200 rushes.
Which itself is kind of impressive that he's getting that much
Aiden
playing
Hutchinson
time.
has 40 pressures this year.
Yeah,
just
45.
45. It's just funny.
No, it's crazy.
And he had 15 and he has 25 pressures over the last 5 years. It's impressive.
But that would be and getting playing time despite that.
He's a run-stopping nose tackle. I get it. I'm just saying, the Panthers don't affect the quarterback. Jaden Daniels should have a lot of success in this game. It really comes down to, can Andy Dalton against it's bad Washington defense, can Andy Dalton and this Panthers offense play the way they did against the Raiders when it was full red rifle time and they, had a great game?
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's not just can Jaden Daniels beat this team or beat this defense, but can he do it to the appropriate magnitude that we expect now that he's showing this?
Put up 40 or you're a bust.
Yeah, seriously. Not just that you're a bust, but it is a different challenge. You've shown that you can answer the bell against a variety of different defenses, different schemes, different strengths. Can you just go out there and beat badly a team that shouldn't be able to hang with you? And then, the corresponding question is, can Carolina and Andy Dalton keep pace with that?
Chuba Hubbard quietly having an outstanding season for the Panthers, 485 yards and 5.6 yards per carry. Again, I think after Bryce Young got benched, you started to see that Carolina has a little bit of firepower, both in their run game and with some of their pass catchers. So got to hang in a shootout here with Washington. So can they do it and keep it within 8.5?
What do I think? I don't think so. Yeah, Washington.
I took Carolina, I guess. My first instinct.
It's a pretty big line.
Yeah. So Dalton, again, Washington's defense, they've got issues. They're on the extreme end of bad defense, great offense. So Carolina hangs within the 8.5 in a shootout. Harry's going to take Washington.
Panthers are slowly inching towards a return from Jonathan Brooks, their running back that they selected in the second round. I think he's practicing now, or at least that window is opened.
Big Jonathan Brooks fan. Be tough to outperform what Hubbard's done this year, though. So
yeah, and you run the risk of sort of returning ACL injuries like a routine nick, but it's not. He didn't have Nick Chubb's injury. You know what I mean? Theoretically, he should be coming back and being effective.
All right, let's talk a little prize picks. I did my lineup yesterday. Get your lineup handy here. A couple guys that we just talked about in the last 2 games here. You guys could join in and play with us. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CheckTheMic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. I unveiled my lineup for the weekend yesterday. We'll review that again in a couple minutes. But Sam, it's your turn. PrizePicks lineup for this weekend.
Yeah. So if you remember last week, I selected 4 in my lineup. I'm trying to claw back because you've got this lead now. You've jumped out, so I'm trying to get it back. I got 3 out of the 4 last week. The Cardinals let me down. So we're doing it again. We're going for 4 in my lineup. The first of which will be A.J. Brown scoring more than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. So we asked the question, Do the Giants have anybody that can stop A.J. Brown? My answer to that is no. I don't believe they do. I believe it's a virtual lock that A.J. Brown scores this week. That's number one in my lineup. Number two, I am sticking with the quarterback rushing numbers because they've done me so well in the past. Bo Nix, who at this point is playing like Justin Fields. He's a one-read and desperately run for the hills quarterback. Bo Nix is going to have more than 26.5 rushing yards for the Denver Broncos.
Interesting.
Guaranteed. Gotta be. The way he's playing the game, that's a lock. Then we're getting to the positive passing aspect for quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels, the player we were just talking about. I believe he will answer the call once again and rack up more than 243.5 passing yards. That one's gone up. The initial look was like 238 or something. So that's racking up. It's going upwards. I think Jaden Daniels is going to carve up that defense. I think he's going to answer that bell. He's going to have a really big game and pass for more than 243.5 passing yards. And then my fourth, Mark Andrews, Mr. Missing in Action for the Baltimore Ravens. Oh. I believe Mark Andrews will have more than 31.5 receiving yards this week. I believe this is the week they're going to need Mark Andrews to show up. I think he'll be able to do it.
I like those. I think the one I question the most is the Bo Nix one. But remember, he
leads the team in rushing multiple weeks.
No, I know. More than 26.5 rushing yards. He's got the fourth best pressure to sack ratio. Like, that was one of the things he did in college. I think you're right. I mean, he's not taking sacks, and he's, in lieu of taking negative plays, he's picking up yards on the ground with some big-time scrambles. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I like that. That's 4. You got 4 in the lineup this week.
He has gotten – Bo Nix has 25 or more rushing yards 4 of his 6 games this season.
I like it. This could be your week. This will be, just to review where I am, 8 for 8 in the actual picks, 9 for 9 if you include my Caleb Williams free square just a couple weeks ago. I'm going Sam Darnold more than 237.5 passing yards this week against the Lions. I think we'll get into some shootout type of territory there. Demario Douglas, the Patriots slot wide receiver. I think Drake May is going to lean on him quite a bit. Jags are awful covering slot receivers, so more than 41.5 receiving yards for Demario Douglas. And Jameson Williams, more than 49.5 receiving yards, probably within the first 5 plays of the game. It's going to be play action, Jameson Williams up top, 58-yard touchdown, and I'll be good with that projection almost immediately.
Are you at all concerned by the troubling injury news relative to Drake May?
It didn't sound troubling. It was just a knee that didn't affect him at practice.
Had to have an MRI on it. You don't do that if there's not an issue.
I have MRIs all the time.
You have MRIs all the time?
Yes. Yeah. Just to make sure things are in check. I had to do back-to-back MRIs when the Giants signed me. Elbow and shoulder. Just sat in the MRI machine for hours.
Fell asleep. Just scan the whole thing.
So there it is. It's PrizePicks. Our lineups. You guys can play along as well. Download the PrizePicks app. Use the code. Check the mic. You get $50 instantly. When you play $5, PrizePicks is the best place to get real money, sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. So, as I mentioned, download the app. Code is Check the Mic. $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code Check the Mic on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's all guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. And as always, they're our presenting sponsor. They're the big boys in this whole Check the Mic scene here. So we appreciate PrizePicks, and we appreciate all of our listeners for being a part of this. And it's a great way to, win some money and support the show all at the same time. So go check it out right now. All right, what do we have here? We get 5 more games. Let's try to we got 5 minutes per game for the last 5.
Let's go.
You ready?
Yep.
Miami Dolphins at the Indianapolis Colts. Colts favored by 3. It appears Anthony Richardson should be making his return this week, as we said last week, but lied to you.
Yeah.
Colts are 3-3, Dolphins 2-3.
Yeah, obviously, Richardson on offense for the Colts will be an interesting thing. To me, though, I want to see, all right, now Mike McDaniels had the bye week. If he doesn't show something for this offense now, I think that's a pretty damning indictment for him. Boy genius, coach, greatest coach, greatest offensive mind in the game. Look at what he's doing, pushing new boundaries, creating these new things, cheat motion. He's breaking the league. Okay, but now you've had a couple of weeks to figure out how to make something work with one of these backup quarterbacks, one of whom you were talking up as, he's a different player than you've seen before. The other of whom we've seen, Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley, right? If there's nothing, if it looks exactly the same, non-functional, what do you expect from me? I don't have anything to work with here. That's not a good look. Like, boy genius offensive mind should be able to figure out some way of making this work with a couple of weeks. I mean, look what Matt LaFleur was able to do with Malik Willis in less time than that. You know?
What I'm hearing is Mike McDaniel a system coach?
Or the
system coach.
Or that meme, the phone, like potential fraud alert, Mike McDaniel. I'm just saying.
No, because he deserves credit for what he did with Tua. Because he didn't, this isn't like.
Maybe Mike McDaniel is a product of Tua.
This isn't like Bruce Arians wins a Super Bowl because Tom Brady chose Tampa Bay and all of a sudden Bruce Arians is a Super Bowl winning coach. This is Mike McDaniel helped make Tua, but maybe he can only make Tua and not everyone else. Or maybe they just didn't get good backups in Miami. But yeah, Huntley's got at least a track record of some success as a backup. And I think with the coming off the bye, they should be able to get something going.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to have impressive performances as a coach. But I think one of them is, look, if you can't get anything out of any of these guys that aren't Tua, it is a pretty big knock on what you're doing as a coach. I mean, again, when you contrast it with, look what Matt LaFleur did with Malik Willis. Look what Kevin O'Connell is doing with Sam Darnold. Like, coaches have done more with less in the past than McDaniel is being tasked with right now against a defense that, okay, it's one of the easier ones in the NFL to diagnose, to figure out how to attack, especially with a bye week working in your favor. I expect and demand to see a significant improvement from this Miami offense this week.
All right, I'll take a similar tact, but around the Anthony Richardson discussion. If Richardson comes back and you have a top 3 pass blocking offensive, or just offense, general, top 3 in both pass blocking and run blocking grades per PFF, all part of your PFF Plus package, top 3 in both, and the emergence of the playmakers we've seen. I know Josh Downs is banged up, but when he's been healthy, looks like one of the most effective slot receivers in the NFL. Alec Pierce, one of the most effective deep threats in the NFL. Michael Pittman Jr., one of the better possession type, Chris Carter role, high-end possession receivers. Is that okay to just say that type of player? Chris Carter, not he's Chris Carter, going to the Hall of Fame. And look, I know they're banged up at running back. You don't have Jonathan Taylor. The run game's been a little hit or miss, but you're Anthony Richardson. You're adding some of that value. So there's some pieces in place in Indy, and I've said this for a few weeks now. They've got like 27, 28 point per game type of potential. They really do as an offense if they get good quarterback play. And we just saw Joe Flacco unlock it a little bit, right? Flacco, same thing. Didn't always play great, but he gave guys opportunities to make plays down the field. Can Richardson start hitting some more of those throws? He's been hit or miss in big plays, in running the ball, some turnover-worthy plays at the wrong times, and just some pure misses. Can he tidy some of that up? And then the eternal question, how does he play football stylistically? Now coming off of another multi-week injury. And does Shane Steichen run him more? Do they still put him in harm's way? Does he learn how to slide instead of turning his back to take a knee to the lower back? What does he do stylistically here? So that's what we'll be watching this week. And of course, guy's afraid to play outside, so he missed the outdoor game on the road last week. He doesn't play any of those. Yeah. He's only got one in his career, so he's back in the dome, the friendly confines.
Friendly confines of Lucas Oil.
Lucas Oil. I almost, the RCA dome was in my head for a minute. RCA. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's 6 minutes. That's 5 minutes on the game.
Done.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Might not be good enough for a one-off. It might not be a VOD.
So
it might not be its own video.
Despite demanding improvement from the Miami offense, I am, however, picking the Colts to cover 3 points.
Let's see what I said this morning when I did it. I took the Colts as well. Anthony Richardson, going to put it all together here, trusting that offense. Harry's also going to take the Colts in this one. Las Vegas Raiders at the Los Angeles Rams. That's not at 1 o'clock on Sunday, right? 4:05 Sunday. That's off in the dock. I know that's a mistake. Rams by 6.5 here, going up against the Davante Adams-less Raiders. Jacoby Myers also on the injury report this week. Cooper Kupp potentially coming back here for the Rams this week.
Yeah, question mark. He's sort of on his way back. He's, this is one where it's like, if you're the Rams, obviously you need him. Injuries are so beat up, but like, do you need him now? Do you need him this week, given he's coming off a fairly serious injury and he's not not a spring chicken anymore? I would suggest no, but maybe they disagree. So do we get Cooper Kupp? And, that's going to be a significant variable in the game. And then the other thing is, like, can the Rams block Max Crosby at all? Now, theoretically, he's going up against probably the best offensive lineman on the Rams in Rob Havenstein. Havenstein's not having his best season. Even if he is, like, that's a matchup problem because Max Crosby's phenomenal. So that's like the one player where you look at it and say, okay, the Raiders have got a real advantage at that one spot, but that's it.
All of the advantages I felt like Antonio Pierce was supposed to bring.
Vibes.
Gone.
Yeah.
They're all gone.
Well, that's the problem with a vibes coach, right? Like, you bring a guy in because he's got the vibes and everything's going in the right direction, but if that evaporates, what does he bring in now? Nothing.
Because Davante Adams endorsed him. Well, he's gone. The one thing that you could kind of sell was, well, this defense played pretty well down the stretch. And look, we may have unlocked the Jack Jones potential and, stealing him from the Patriots off waivers or, off the street. And he's not creating turnovers the same way he did last year. The Raiders have 10 more missed tackles than any other team in the NFL so far this year. So, like, all of the advantages that you were getting from last year, interim head coach Antonio Pierce, appear to be gone.
Yeah.
And now I keep harping on this every week, but it's a big deal. So again, the Raiders feel like they're in transition. You take away one elite second half against the Ravens, where maybe they had a little bit of luck as well, and they're pretty clearly 1-5. But they won that game. They're sitting here at 2-4. Beat the Browns. Did they beat the Browns? Right? That was their other win, right? Browns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Lost my mind again. So yeah, they need to figure, they almost need like mid-year Antonio Pierce last year to get this defense playing better, because they should be better. They did well down the stretch last year. Max Crosby, still elite. I know he was dealing with injuries earlier in the year. Figuring out who they've been trying to figure out who these playmakers are, right? Brock Bowers is going to get fed, and he is outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
He's on pace to be one of the best rookie tight ends of all time, as expected. But Trey Tucker, DJ Turner, who are these guys? And then Aiden O'Connell. Let's be serious. They're probably drafting a quarterback next year. Aiden O'Connell's playing for, are you going to be a high-end backup for the rest of your career? This is your opportunity to show that you could be that guy right now for the Raiders.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year he was potentially auditioning for, hey, could you be a surprise starter and, win this job and actually be the quarterback of the future? Now, realistically, he's playing for, can you be their backup?
The Browns game that got in my head is the Browns had that play where they took the lead that got negated by the penalty. So it was like messing with my brain as far as what actually happened in that game. It's kind of like when I can't remember where a guy got drafted based off of my own mock draft. I was like, well, I mocked him in the third. Was he a third? Oh, no, he was a second.
Yeah.
It's just messing with me right now.
People don't understand the struggle of just mental.
There's a lot of information in your brain, and not going to lie, as you get into your 40s,
That's what I'm saying.
it's a little fuzzier.
You reach an age.
There's more files, and it's harder to find them.
And the brain, it's just the problem is the filing system was never great,
Yeah.
Like, neither one of us has those types of organized brains where everything's in its right category.
No.
So you reach a stage.
Folders are all over the place.
Right. You reach a stage. It's like, I don't even know what the filing system is anymore.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm just like, look, Big Boss Man is rushing the passer for the Raiders. And I'm like confusing 1989 WWF with 2024 Raiders.
Yeah. And that's helping nobody.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you were just watching 1989 Royal Rumbles telling me about it, and that's throwing me off.
Throwing everything off.
Then my wife and I were just listening to 90s songs all last night. Really taking me back. So now I'm like full late 90s mode because of an Instagram post.
Great.
All right,
That's
let's
going
go.
to be helpful.
Who are you picking in this game? Also not a VOD. There's no more VODs left, so there will be no VODs on any of these games, just so you guys know.
Nobody knows what that means.
I'm talking to Ben and Janko.
Right, but that's a relatively limited audience.
That's what makes us fun.
I'm picking the Rams.
I will also take the Rams.
6.5 points at home.
Harry's a Raiders believer here.
Even though at home, like this is not a home game for them because there's probably more Raiders fans in LA than Rams fans.
Oh yeah, that is like the Rams never play home games, but the Raiders don't either. So this is like the Raiders' top home game here. It's like on the road in LA.
It's a nomadic game for everybody.
Let's talk about Art Shell and the Los Angeles Raiders.
God. Oh, let's not do that.
We're both taking the Rams. Harry's taking the Raiders. Tennessee Titans at the Buffalo Bills. It's the Oilers and the Bills, and it's Warren Moon and the comeback against Frank Reich comeback.
The comeback.
Revenge game.
Does that game have a name? Usually those things they have a moniker of some description.
I don't know if there's a name for that.
That was
the
just
greatest
the biggest comeback ever. Like it never got a name though, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Bills by 8.5 here on Sunday.
Yeah, and obviously the now Amari Cooper clad Bills.
How does Amari Cooper fit in here with the Bills?
So, interestingly, like L'Jarius Sneed, their Tennessee's big acquisition in the offseason, he's not had a good year so far.
No, not at all.
And immediately I would sort of go, well, they're playing him outside all the time. Maybe he was best inside. But like Kansas City did that his final year as well, where he was really good. They, sort of made room for, other players. And suddenly he's sort of transitioned this role from a guy that was playing the slot and outside to now just a perimeter corner. So I don't think that's it. Like, it's not like he can't play there. We saw it last season in Kansas City. He was really good. He's just not having a good year. And now he has to, he's probably going to have the responsibility of covering Amari Cooper for a lot of this. So that part's going to be really interesting. And then the other side of the ball, this feels like the game that could end Will Levis as a starting quarterback. Like, Buffalo's defense is good. It's very good at causing confusion and difficulty for opposing quarterbacks. Levis could go out there and just be non-functional in this game and toss the ball to the defense a couple of times. And if that happens, it feels like Callahan's right there ready to just go, all right, that's it, enough. Put in Rudolph. Let's see how that goes.
Just really quick, the Snead discussion's interesting because he's still playing. Like, he's a really good press man corner. Like, that's what he's supposed to be. And he's still pretty much playing a similar role. Like, he's going to get it's like 15 to 20 press snaps per game. It's been similar. He just hasn't been as effective as he was in Kansas City. Now, part of that, Titans don't rush the passer very well.
Right.
And we've seen a lot of quick passing against them. But it just hasn't been as good for Snead. The Titans are really good stopping the run. Like, that's kind of been their MO. Devondre Sweat, physicality up front. They have a chance to maybe slow down the Buffalo run game. I don't trust them as much slowing down the passing attack.
Right. And I do think generally playing Snead as a purely outside corner does take away some of his skill set. Like, he's really good at that, Rondé Barber type stuff that we were talking to him about yesterday, right? Like, the ability to affect the run, the ability to blitz, he's so good in and around the line of scrimmage that when you just say, all right, go out that way on an island and play press man, like, he should theoretically still be good at that. He has been good at that in the past, but I do think it takes away a lot of his skill set and minimizes the impact that he can have on a game.
I really enjoyed Rondé as a guest yesterday. I had a great discussion with him about NFL defenses, stylistically, where they're going. He had done a lot of research for the 33rd team, breaking down rookie wide receivers. Had a great conversation about the top 3 draft picks yesterday. So go check that out if you haven't heard it yet. Yesterday's Wednesday episode with Rondé Barber. I think Amari Cooper's the Levis thing is huge. Because as we mentioned, like, if Tennessee falls to 1-5, the worse Levis plays, the more they're drafting a quarterback again next year. Anyway, he was not Brian Callahan's handpicked quarterback.
Right.
They shouldn't be this bad offensively. The two-headed monster at running back, I think, can be really good. They've got dudes to throw to. Mason Rudolph could probably do that more effectively right now, especially the way this NFL's trending. The Mason Rudolph reclamation types seem to be having some success. We might be a week or two away from seeing that move.
I just think he's like, you look at those graphs, the sort of quarterback efficiency or performance graphs that people put out there on Twitter. Early in the season, it's like, wherever everybody is, and then Bryce Young in his own little outlier data point in the bottom left, right? It's like, this is awful. This is as bad as it gets. And eventually Carolina had to just go, all right, we can't keep going with this. This is now Will Levis. Like, he's now in that area of these graphs. Like, he's playing so badly that at some point they're going to have to, like, I generally think that there's probably not a huge amount of purpose to going to Mason Rudolph. Like, I don't anticipate, it's possible, but I don't anticipate Rudolph becoming the next Geno Smith, right?
Agreed.
So in that context, it's like, what is the point in going to Mason Rudolph for the rest of the season? I do, however, think that Levis is now approaching the territory where you say you don't have an option. Like, he's just playing himself to the bench. Then at some point you have to show him to the bench. Otherwise, everything else just goes, well, to hell with this. Like, it's one of those sort of accountability things. Like, at some point you just have to say the only suitable accountable response to this level of quarterback play is to sit the guy down, because otherwise you're doing everybody else on the team a disservice, right? Levis is definitely approaching, if not already firmly inside that territory, and this feels like the straw that could break the camel's back.
Just to respond really quick, in the chat, the request where the response was the Titans are number 1 against the pass. They have the 11th best EPA per play allowed against the pass. One of the worst pass rushing grades. So that's what I'm talking about. Not so much yard. I don't even look at total yards or anything like that for defenses. But they've been much better at stopping the run than stopping the pass so far this year.
It's a good defense generally.
But also some of that is like, you played Tyler Huntley, and that you had an awful Dolphins team that you played on Monday night. It's like, who you played matters in this entire equation. So I think the Titans feel like one of those teams where you do want to kind of come out chucking it and spread the ball around and maybe even give up on the run a little bit more. So we might see more pass game from Josh Allen in this one. 8.5 Sunday in Buffalo. Where are you going?
I'm going with the Bills.
I'll also take the Bills. Harry will also take the Bills. And yeah, see what happens.
It's a lot of points to cover for against the defense. It is pretty useful.
Yeah, Buffalo gets a lot of these big spreads at home. Yeah. And in my head, they come through. And then I think recently they haven't. So I'll take them again this time. All right, two more games to discuss here. New England Patriots at the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's in London. Wembley?
Yes.
At Wembley.
Shifted from Spurs Stadium.
Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. The Jags favored by 5.5 in this one. 1-5 Patriots versus the 1-5 Jags.
This is the third of 4 London games. Is that right?
Is there a fourth?
I believe so.
It's definitely the third. I know that.
I read something. You'll love this.
There's a Germany game.
Yeah.
Germany's the Giants and Panthers, I think.
Is there only one Germany game?
I don't know.
Well, I was reading something about how...
I'm just taking it one game at a time.
I mean, the NFL confirmed that there will be an Ireland game soon. They weren't sure if it's going to be 2025, could be 2026, but they're going to Dublin at some point, right? And I was reading something that was saying...
rent out your house to Goodell.
Yeah, for the week. That they're trying to sell this international package, as a new rights thing, right? Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, the international package. Because at the moment, most of those games are on NFL Network, right? So they think that they can create this whole package and sell the whole thing to, somebody, right? For more money, because the NFL's short on cash.
Just increase the cash flow a little bit.
But the other aspect of this was with the view, effectively, to creating this permanent 9:30 a.m. Sunday time slot.
Permanent?
So there would be a permanent morning game on Sunday to then go to the 1 p.m.s, to the 4 p.m.s, to Sunday Night Football.
Awful. It's like...
I knew you'd be excited by that.
Does nobody go to church anymore? Come on, man. That's ridiculous.
I mean, this is one of those, you run the risk sometimes of seeing things only through the prism of how you experience life, right? Yeah. I think there's a lot of people for whom that's perfect. They get to spend the whole day on Sunday just watching football.
Yeah.
9 in the morning.
Hey, honey, remember how I used to do some chores on Sunday morning?
Not anymore.
Or, mow the lawn or whatever? Sorry. Lawn's going to have to wait.
Can't do it.
There's a
football game on.
There's a game in Sicily this week. As part of the international game.
The international series,
The international series in Sicily.
Yeah.
Now, if they host a game in Palazzolo, Sicily, I'll go to that one.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think we should
In
go
my
to the
home
Dublin
village.
game when it is. When they have the Dublin game next year, hopefully. We should go to that.
Gotta go to Dublin. Yeah. How big are the doorways? Is it like, don't they have, it's like,
Dude, Dublin is famous for giant Georgian doorways.
Oh, really?
You're fine.
oh, good.
In fact, you're better there than you are
in.
here.
No, I'm in.
Yeah. See? Easy. Anyway, Jags, Patriots.
Taking a sip. So talk about the game.
Jags, Patriots. I'm most excited to see Brian Thomas Jr. going up against Christian Gonzalez.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's a fun matchup.
Two guys you hate.
Two guys I hate. Two guys.
You don't hate. You were lower on than most in your pre-draft evaluation of both.
Yeah, and interestingly, in a similar way, in specifically like Gonzalez, my problem was never like he doesn't have the ability to be a top-level NFL corner. It's like he's more athlete than player right now, and it's always. I think sometimes you struggle, or I do anyway, struggle with those guys, particularly when comparing them to somebody else in the same draft class who isn't. So Trayvon Walker versus Aiden Hutchinson, right? Trayvon Walker is the greatest athlete we've ever seen at the position. And if he hits, the top 5% of his range of outcomes, he might be Aiden Hutchinson, right? Sure. Or we could just take Aiden Hutchinson, who's already Aiden Hutchinson. We don't need to project. He's just that good right now. So Christian Gonzalez, he's amazing athlete, size, fluidity. Look at his movement skills. If he hits the top 10% of his range of outcomes, he might be Devin Witherspoon. Or we could take Devin Witherspoon, who's already Devin Witherspoon. Brian Thomas Jr., it's a little bit more complicated because I don't know who you'd compare him to necessarily in that draft class. But anyway, point being, I think that is where you get I sort of unduly negatively maybe project those guys. It's like if there's an obvious comp to somebody who's already a much better technical football player, why wouldn't you just take that guy? So it wasn't that I didn't think Gonzalez could become a good player. It's that he wasn't at the time, and there was a much more obvious guy who's already good. So both Gonzalez and Brian Thomas, I think, have shown significantly more nuance, technique, and ability as a football player than they did in college, where they were predominantly athletic freaks getting by on being bigger, stronger, faster than the opposition.
We'll also talk about this more at draft time, but there are certain positions where you do want to make you are more likely to hit if you make an athletic projection than others. Edge rusher is a tough one because if you don't produce, there's not a whole lot of non-producers who start producing at the NFL level, no matter how good they are athletically. There are receivers who do it there, but in particular, there are definitely corners who do it. We're seeing Zion McCollum. We've seen Reek Woolen. Christian Gonzalez, not that level of athlete, but similar kind of idea. Interesting one here. Now you've got Drake May, second start. I already took Demario Douglas in put him on my lineup here, my PrizePicks lineup, right, because the Jags are allowing a league worst 128.3 passer rating to slot receivers, 458 yards and 5 touchdowns.
This is, of course, all with the context that you don't believe MRIs are significant to anything.
He didn't miss any practice time.
No, it's because they took him from the practice to the MRI machine.
He was a full participant in practice, and then they were like, we should just get an MRI just to make sure everything's good.
For no particular reason.
I can't change my lineup now. Well, I'm expecting Drake May to play. We'll see what happens. Jags have the second worst EPA per play against, and I'm interested to see what their defensive line can do, though, right? Because a lot of what went wrong for New England last week is this inexperienced offensive line just absolutely collapsing on certain plays. The tackles could not hold up unless they had help. What do they do with Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen? As much as we've picked on Trayvon throughout the time here, 2 weeks ago was the best game of his career against the Colts, and he does look like the speed to power is playing better this year. Like he has a chance to put up those 6 and 7 pressure games. So I think the edge rushers for the Jags have an opportunity to have some success against the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Hines-Allen in particular, you would expect to have a big game simply because he's a really good player consistently, and he'll be going up against a weak link. Walker, it's interesting. He hasn't played a bad player yet at right tackle this year, which is where he plays, lines up most of the time. He has faced some okay players and some average starters, and ironically, his best game came against the best tackle I think that he's faced. But he hasn't had a game yet against a guy where you'd be like, okay, you really should win that matchup all the time. this will be probably the first game where that's true. So it is setting a lower bar now for Trayvon Walker, and he has flashed more this season than he has previously. Like, can he just go to town on a subpar offensive tackle?
As of 11:07 a.m.,
Okay.
Patriots offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt said he was, quote, not concerned, end quote, about Drake May's injury. So if Alex Van Pelt isn't concerned, I'm not concerned.
Okay, cool.
Patriots offensive coordinator.
Gotcha.
So we're good. We'll be good.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Lawrence, to playing his best football the last 2 weeks, kind of went unnoticed last week because it was kind of like a flashback to 2023 where he was hitting dudes in the hands in the end zone and they were not becoming touchdowns. I had my concerns after 4 weeks watching 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 5 weeks. Where are we? First few weeks, Trevor Lawrence, a little concerning. Last 2 weeks, much better.
Yeah, definitely.
End scene.
End scene. Yeah, like it was a weird flashback last week. Like Ian Hartitz had the tweet, right, that Jags receivers dropped 4 separate Trevor Lawrence touchdown passes in that game.
And not all necessarily considered drops, like the defense was in there, but they all
drop his word, not mine.
Right. Hit hands that easily could have been caught and you wouldn't have batted an eye. Right.
Which is a consistent trend with Trevor Lawrence. And B, he does feed into that a bit. Like the being a tick late on a lot of these plays.
He does.
It affects that.
Yeah. I don't know how much I can divulge here, but the 33rd team started by getting a whole bunch of former coaches and GMs together and like talking ball. And there's like a weekly call. Janko, let me know if I'm not going to give anything away here. There's like a weekly call where all the old coaches, everybody gets together and they talk ball, break down film together and everything, and it's great. And a former NFL coach yesterday, he was breaking down Sam Darnold. It was Mike Martz. He's breaking down Sam Darnold and how good his footwork has been and how impressed he was, showing like old Darnold tape versus new Darnold tape. And when Trevor Lawrence came up in the discussion, a lot of the discussion from other people was like the footwork, the consistency just isn't where it needs to be. He's so talented, but man, just like do the simple stuff better. And I think that definitely showed up early this season in Trevor Lawrence's film. Mm-hmm. That's all. That's all I wanted to say.
Cool. Well done.
All right. 5.5 is the spread. Jags favored here. 2 1-5 teams. I think it's a sneaky, fun matchup here. I just think, because we don't know what Drake May is. And anytime you have this young quarterback, you don't know what he is. Hashtag fun to watch. Where you going?
It's also of course, 2017 AFC Championship revenge game.
And a 1996 AFC Championship revenge game. For
So,
Mark. This is for Mark.
And the Jags, of
and
course.
And for Bortles.
They've lost them both. So I believe they're going to get their revenge in this game.
Do you want me to give you the Jags Pats history off the top of my head? Do you want to go back to 96 when Brunell hit 2 Hail Marys to Jimmy Smith?
Can't tell you how much I don't. Jacksonville are going to win and cover.
Remember that playoff game? Revenge for Scott Zolak, who started the playoff game against the Jags. I'll take New England to keep it close enough. I guess I'm taking New England. Harry's taking New England as well. It's one more game. It's the Thursday night game. Denver Broncos at the New Orleans Saints. It's tonight, 8:15, Amazon Prime. The Broncos are favored by 2.5. Sean Payton making his return to the Dome.
Yeah. Revenge game for Sean Payton.
3-3 Broncos versus the 2-4 Saints. Saints have lost 4 straight here.
Right. And the Saints now have no wide receivers.
For Spencer Rattler.
They're all hurt.
Yeah.
Which interestingly gives them a wide receiver core that looks a lot like the kind of receiver core that Sean Payton seems to design. Like outside of Cortland Sutton, they're basically rocking with the same receiving group.
He opts into wide receivers 3 through 6 as his starters.
Like it looks like the kind of group that Sean Payton would decide, oh, those guys are my guys from now on. I'm going to bring them with me.
You hating on Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims?
No, more like Little Jordan Humphrey and those type of players, right? Like if any of those guys, Bub Means and any of those could become the next Little Jordan Humphrey.
Little Jordan Humphrey has been making plays for Sean Payton since the Bush administration. It's really impressive.
Like if Sean Payton randomly decided that Cedric Wilson was the player he was going to bring with him at every stop, that would make sense, right? And he's now there with the Saints, trying to make it work with Spencer Rattler.
Saints have allowed the lowest passer rating on 10-plus yard throws. Bo Nix, 10-plus yard throws have been inconsistent. He's got a passer rating of 53.6.
An adventure.
That's 36th in the NFL for anyone who has 10-plus attempts. So, again, Nix has been interesting because there's been a lot of positives to his game. The scrambling has been fantastic. I think you're right. He kind of is, one read and kind of take off. He's not necessarily going through reads consistently. But there's also like sneaky hidden plays in there because he is moving the ball with his legs and not taking sacks and negative plays in there as well.
Yeah.
Saints tackling has been awful.
I made the comment before, and I hadn't really put this together until now, but he's playing like Justin Fields. Like he doesn't have the utterly freakish Justin Fields athleticism. He is, however, a pretty good athlete, but he's playing like Justin Fields right now, which is so far away from the quarterback I think people pigeonholed him as being when he was at draft time. Like, he was talked about as like cerebral, high percentage, low depth of target, efficient Drew Brees-esque passer that fits perfectly in a Sean Payton offense. And instead, what's happening now is you've got a Justin Fields impersonation act. Like, he's an Elvis impersonator, right? And you got this guy who's just going one read and scramble and hope you can make something happen. Like, when you watch him in a pocket, there are certain players that he immediately looks like he's just itching for the excuse to get the hell out of there. He has zero comfort in the pocket, even when he's working from within it and trying to do it the right way. You can almost see he's waiting for the excuse to be able to get out of there and go and just try and make a play.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, it's two rookies now, Bo Nix versus Spencer Rattler. I've got my concerns with how Nix is playing. I think I have my concerns with how the Saints are going to handle the Broncos. The Broncos blitz. They've been blitzing like top 3 in the league as far as percentage goes. They're up there. And to handle the blitz, you need to be able to pass protect, man on man, and also be on the same page with QB and receiver. And that's where I think the Saints are going to have issues. They're not pass blocking well since all of their offensive line injuries. And how are you going to expect Spencer Rattler with no Rashid Shaheed, with no Chris Olave, to be on the same page with all these guys? I think they're going to get after him. I think Denver's really going to get after him.
Yeah, though it is
in the dome.
It is one of those interesting situations where the backup quarterback that became the starter is suddenly left throwing to all
the guys that he knows.
Yeah, like left throwing to all the guys that would have been running with the scout team with him, right? So, I do wonder if Spencer Rattler actually has more chemistry with Bub Means than Derek Carr would have, who's barely seen the guy.
Your Bub Means, was there no projection for Bub Means this week to put into your lineup?
Sadly.
Okay, just making sure.
I will also, so we got a couple of my guys, wide receiver. Bub Means was one of my sleeper picks in this draft, and then obviously Troy Franklin we both loved. I'm no mathematician, but in the last 3 weeks, Troy Franklin has had -2 receiving yards, 20 receiving yards, 31 receiving yards. So he's 4 or 5 weeks away from going off for like $160.
I think it's going to be exponential.
That's what I'm saying.
More than incremental.
At that trajectory, you plot those on a graph. We're 4 or 5 weeks away from a monster Troy Franklin game.
We used to make our Thursday night predictions. Let's do it. Troy Franklin breakout game. You heard it here first.
Oh, no, not yet.
No, it's happening.
No,
I'm doing it.
It's not happening today.
He's going to go from 36 to 122 tonight.
You plot that out, we're getting like a 58-yard.
4 catches for 122 over Marshawn Lattimore. 2 touchdowns tonight. All right, let's make a pick. Broncos by 2.5. Sean Payton returning to play against the Saints. Over-under's 37.5. That's an interesting one with the 2 rookie QBs. Just saying.
Ultimately, I feel like without wide receivers, Spencer Rattler and the Saints offense may struggle against a very good Denver defense. And then it's like, can Bo Nix get anything done? If he can, they win and win comfortably, I would think. So Denver.
Yeah, I'll take Denver here. Harry will take Denver as well to cover on the road. Amazon Prime. If it gets ugly, I'm just curious how mad Al gets. Like, I always like to keep an eye on Al. The NFL, they might have had a meeting since last Monday and like, hey dudes, like, keep the flags in your pockets here next week. We don't want 22 accepted flags here. for Al's
Why wouldn't you?
sanity here.
If you knew that there was a crew that did that, like a wildly flag happy crew, why would you ever put them on an island game?
Because you have to rotate everybody. You
rotate them throughout the 1 p.m. games.
Rotate them.
Don't rotate them.
Are they the flag crew? I don't know.
I think so. I think that's a very flag happy.
I don't have access to the flag data.
I would just simply never put a flag happy crew in a primetime game.
Can't do it. All right, that's enough. That's our show. That's it for today.
Yeah.
Appreciate everybody for tuning in. As always, tell your friends. We're just continuing to grow here over at Check the Mic, having a lot of fun. Appreciate everybody for being a part. As I mentioned earlier, check out the Wednesday show if you haven't already. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe. If you're listening in podcast land, make sure you're subscribed. And tomorrow for YouTube only, I will be talking draft with Kyle Krabs, NFL draft lead over at the 33rd team. We'll be breaking down quarterbacks, Travis Hunter, his sleepers, so be sure to check that out on YouTube. And then tonight, right after the game, we will be instantly reacting to the Sean Payton revenge game, Saints and Broncos. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again on Monday morning with more Check the Mic.